One meets Sunbong. He was 24, just a few years out of university, and already buried deep in the corporate grind, his only escape from his student days was watching videos while eating dinner. That evening, he sat on the tiled floor of his rented sixth-floor room, holding a bowl of old wet masters, brain-damaging pickled cabbage noodles, while a marine arthropod stream played on his laptop. He casually fired off a bullet comment, hoping that everyone would reach Holy Terra soon, before leaning back against the old leather sofa and letting the excitement of the chat wash away the pain of today's overtime. Even with the window open, the summer heat hung thick in the room. He kept the air conditioner off to save electricity, leaving the fan to struggle. That laptop had been with him since college, barely surviving as a video player. To keep it running, he had even ordered a custom Purity seal online, a red cloth strip printed with garbled Latin prayers, and glued it to the lid. He had actually convinced himself that the computer ran better because of it. A tiny tech priest incense burner sat right on the table, shaking gently every time he slurped his noodles. But inside that computer, the battery was swollen and dying from being plugged in constantly. He had absolutely no clue. A sudden scorched smell cut right through the noodle steam, and by the time he actually noticed, it was already too late. Black smoke was pouring from the ventilation slot. He jumped up in panic, knocking the noodle bowl right over. Spicy soup splashed straight across the keyboard. He lunged forward to grab the burning machine, sheer instinct overriding his brain. But the moment his hands touched it, the swollen lithium battery gave out. The wet soup and months of damage triggered a massive short circuit. Sparks exploded as flames swallowed the table. Talk about a complete disaster. He stumbled backward, stepping onto the old leather sofa, but the slick, sweat-soaked surface gave way beneath him. He crashed straight through the screen window. The fragile mesh ripped instantly, tearing the cheap plastic frame clean out of its grooves. His hands flailed, catching absolutely nothing. Back inside, the fake Purity seal burned alongside the tech priest incense burner, feeding the growing fire. A thin trail of smoke curled around the burning paper, drifting out into the dark night sky. Right after him, he was falling. He hit the concrete head first from 6 stories up. He woke up in blinding pain that exploded from his shattered skull down to his fingertips. Looking up, 2 strange moons glowed with eerie purple and blue light. The city was gone, replaced by the damp smell of fresh forest. Soiled before he could process the shock, a cold, mechanical voice echoed in his mind. It welcomed him to the endless continent as Survivor 73,481, notifying him the survival system was active. Talk about a brutal wake-up call. Only the strong had choices. A semi-transparent blue status panel floated in his vision. It clearly listed his name and his race. Human, but his special attribute was corrupted text, while his life status showed a severe head injury and multiple deep bruises, listed as near death but rapidly healing, while his stamina was completely bottomed out. A one-time injury repair system counted down its final seconds, then a communication. The trading and manufacturing systems open, showing a strange line at the bottom. It claims his personal storage activation failed completely. This error prompt explains that a balance compensation is now being calculated. He easily understands the basic setup from all those reincarnation web novels. But his first impression is that the interface is incredibly bare. There are absolutely no conventional attributes or levels. Then he realizes with some relief that this is not a grimdark world. That weird recruitment drive from earlier was probably just a complete myth. He presses 2 fingers to his head and feels the wound already closing. Right then, his compensation arrives as a pale blue wristband. It feels ice cold to the touch and is built from unknown elements. The system describes it as a pocket dimension storage device. He slips his hand through the band, feeling it bind to his wrist. A brief, strange tingle runs through him as the binding and access protocols complete. Just like that, he instantly knows exactly how to control the pocket space. Placing his hand on a large, half-buried rock, he sends a mental command. The 50-kilogram stone instantly vanishes and then reappears right in front of him. His injury status clears, his health is fully restored, and stamina becomes abundant. Standing alone in a quiet forest clearing, he wears nothing but his shorts. The smartest thing is to inspect the system before any danger arrives. He opens the manufacturing interface, and the blue screen suddenly shatters. What replaces it looks absolutely nothing like a standard survival game menu. Spinning iron gears and pale skulls suddenly fill his vision. Dense binary code scrolls past, mixed with fragments of Latin phrases. Warning flashes that unknown interference is forcing a protocol override. A raw signal reaches through the static, confirming his authorization. The system praises the Omnissiah, commanding him to spread its glory. Talk about a massive plot twist, he just stares at the screen. The dark aesthetic of skulls and cogs is utterly unmistakable. It is the exact brand of sacred fanaticism he knows so well. This is definitely the Adeptus Mechanicus from Warhammer 40,000. Suddenly, his corrupted special attribute clears up to read Untouchable. An exchange list unfolds, offering everything from food to warships. The ration block is synthesized from highly questionable organic matter. It is described as tasting exactly like chewing wet wood. However, it provides full nutrition with a slight risk of toxic contamination. The long-term health consequences of eating this are completely unknown. He also sees water purification tablets blessed by the church. They are capable of removing trace chaos corruption from any liquid. The purified water will carry a faint smell of oil and incense. Weapons range from a cheap crude dagger to a master-crafted firearm. He can even buy a bolt gun, though ammunition is sold separately. Raw materials span from basic steel shards to mythical space alloys. Prices reach 200,000 points for rare metals. A premium crafting option can easily upgrade any gear he acquires. A single piece of equipment cost a 30% surcharge for a blessing service. This offered a void ritual with completely unexpected outcomes. He was starving, not having eaten since before the fall. He was unarmed, standing in a strange alien forest in just shorts. He opened the system's communication channel to check his survival points, the local channel. Scrolled with survivors comparing notes, several confirmed arriving right after near-death experiences, losing consciousness similar to his own. One explained that a personal backpack could be accessed as a simple cloth bag labeled Survivor Supply Pack. He tried summoning his personal backpack, nothing, no response. Just the cold weight of the storage wristband, then a new post. One person reported a snake kill yielded a single point, another found glass-like objects in nearby ruins, worth 10 points each when smashed. As high-purity crystals, the channel moved fast, but the pattern was clear. Monsters and resources both yielded survival points. The exact amount depended on the target's strength or the resource quality. He checked his stats again, focusing on a column called Untouchable. In 40K, an Untouchable was defined as a soulless person, someone born with a null trait projecting an antipsionic field. This field caused anyone with soul sensitivity to feel instinctive disgust. The system had almost certainly failed to summon his personal backpack. Because his null field disrupted soul-based energy, a major disruption. The storage device was his compensation workaround, a solid backup. He understood his situation better now, but he was still unarmed. Deep in the forest, a strange rustling echoed from several bushes at once. Talk about terrible timing. Several weird creatures pushed through the undergrowth. They had low, segmented bodies, rushing toward him with clear, aggressive intent. No exploring here, he scanned the ground, his only potential weapons. The stones he had used to test his storage device. He widened his stance as the nearest creature launched, sidestepping it to slap his palm on. The massive stone storing it instantly. 1-2, he scrambled up. Nearby tree, desperately using friction against his bare skin, the rough bark tore him up as he climbed 2 meters above the ground, the digging. Rat worms, 7 in total, gathered below. Their segmented legs were too short to climb and they could not jump. 2 began scraping the bark with sharp forelimbs. He clamped his legs tight, aiming his storage device at the group directly beneath him, releasing both stones at once. 4. Loud impacts rang out across their carapaces. The shells held, but the worms immediately went rigid from internal damage, wailing with sharp, painful cries. He descended slightly, reached his toes to a stone and stored it again before climbing back up. A few minutes later, the remaining worms clustered around their dead companions, greedily feeding on the remains. He released the stone from above a second time. 2 more fell. The third was pinned but alive, thrashing against the dirt. He dropped from the trunk, slammed his full weight onto the stone, and felt the shell shatter. His status screen showed mild bruising on his feet, but luckily nothing structural. His log Displayed 3 new notifications, 6 worms killed in 2 groups plus 1, totaling 21 points at 3 points per creature. He was using a branch to poke through the sticky remains when he noticed white smoke rising from one pile and something hard embedded inside. He worked it free carefully, checking the system description, and received a notification of 15 points for some ore that was in the process of being dissolved by the creature's digestive fluid. He looked at the dagger he still had from his earlier purchase. The part of the blade that had touched the residue was already turning black. He scraped it against the soil repeatedly until the acid coating came away. The system updated its description of the dagger from functional to brittle and barely usable. He found ore in 2 more worm piles by probing with the branch, bringing both pieces clean by burying and rinsing them with soil before storing them. 12 and 18 points arrived for those, bringing his total to 47. He listed the smallest piece on the market at 30 points as a test, noting in the description that the worm digestive acid was extremely corrosive and required careful handling. The market in those first hours was an absolute scramble. Food and water were hard currency. Weapons were scarce and expensive. He filtered for clothing and footwear and found a dark blue tracksuit for 5 points and worn sports shoes for 4, paying 9 points. And putting them on when they arrived, the rough fabric was a strange comfort after the open air. For a weapon, he found a steel dagger with several chips and a broken tip sourced from beside a body, according to the seller, described as good material and quite sharp despite the damage. He paid 10 points and arrived at a balance of 2. Following the tree line where the forest thinned, he walked for half an hour before reaching a place where the woodlands simply stopped. An endless desert lay on the other side with absolutely no transition zone. The 2 ecosystems pressed together along a seam as if someone had assembled a map. Without caring whether the pieces matched, he stepped across and a wall of heat hit him immediately, the sand scorching through the soles of his shoes and the wind burning his face. He estimated at least 40 degrees, possibly more. He stepped back into the shade, standing at the boundary to think about the survivors spawned into that brutal desert. Without clothes at the start, a person there would have had minutes before the heat brought them down. Talk about brutal. His forest spawn had its own problems but was measurably better. He returned to the tree line and sat down against a trunk to think through priorities. Water was the most pressing issue, and his system had no directly drinkable water in the exchange list. The cheapest item on the market was a 500 milliliter mineral water at 20 points, with murky river water at 15 and tiny dew collections at 8. Desert survivors were competing hard for every available water source and driving prices up. His system offered water purification tablets at 8 points each, which was a potentially useful gap. He bought a deformed iron pot from the market for 3 points after confirming it did not leak, then found 2 listings of stream water explicitly flagged as unprocessed and potentially fatal even after boiling. At 5 points per portion, he bought 2 portions and 1 water purification tablet from his system for 8 points. His balance sat at 26 points. The grayish-white pill was marked with a mechanicist's skull. The gear was on one side, the Inquisition emblem sat on the other. This Inquisition tablet was built for operatives traveling across dangerous zones. It handled hostile sectors and chaos-touched water, pure power. Its power was immense. He dropped the pill into the filled pot. With both portions of stream water inside, the surface began to churn. Fine bubbles rose, barely visible. Tiny filaments squirmed under the surface. They writhed at the edge of his vision, then complete silence. The churning stopped. A thin layer of grayish-white material settled below. He scooped up a splash. The system identified it as clean water. It tasted strange, not pleasant but harmless. He bought 10 empty bottles. He spent 2 points on them, carefully discarding the toxic residue. This left 850 milliliters of beautifully purified water. He listed 1 bottle for 14 points, and it sold almost instantly. He reinvested his earnings, more stream water and another tablet. A 3-liter purification left slightly more residue, but cleared the danger. He bottled everything. 6 listings went up at 14 points each. But his regular stream water seller was gone, marked as a dead account. The system did not cancel active listings, even when a seller died. Those points simply dissolved. Nobody would ever receive that credit. Talk about a creepy transaction. He paid 10 points to a literal corpse. He stared at the error message for a moment, then closed it. His balance hit 84 points as the bottles sold, but time was running out. Someone in the regional channel shared a guide for a basic water filter. Using a cut bottle, sand, and ash, survivors bypassed the middleman. Prices shifted. His profitable first-mover advantage had completely vanished. He bought 2 crude ration blocks and another tablet, spending 18 points. This left 66 points. He opened the crafting menu once again. He focused on an item he had postponed, the crude combat dagger. It cost 50 points, forged from scrap metal in bottom-tier Hive City workshops. The weapon was extremely durable. It could easily take massive abuse. Its unknown metal composition was clearly superior to ordinary iron. A system warning advised against testing it on Genstealer carapace. He purchased it. The dagger arrived heavy. It weighed nearly a full kilogram. The single-edged blade was completely covered in rough forge marks and scratches. Its grip smelled of foul leather, and the guard was just welded plates. He placed a drop of corrosive ratworm acid on the rough blade tip. He watched closely, no reaction at all. The acid did absolutely nothing. This interstellar-era metal easily shrugged off acid that would destroy steel. He swung the dagger twice, getting used to its heavy balance. A deep sense of security washed over him. This was a real weapon. It was worth every single point. Outside, a dark night settled fully. The forest stopped being neutral. Whispers and strange noises echoed everywhere. Distant beast howls, buzzing insects, and a quiet, creeping rustling filled the darkness. This strange rustling was definitely not the wind. Something was coming. He built himself a sleeping platform earlier, wedging cut branches into carved holes in the trunk until he had a frame 5 meters up, covered with leafy branches for camouflage. He bought a length of hemp rope from the market for 3 points, tying one end under his arms and the other to the trunk above before settling in with his crude combat dagger gripped tightly in both hands. A soft shuffling sound, clearly different from the ambient forest noise, echoed from below during the deep hours. He opened his eyes, quieted his breathing, and peered through the leaf cover. Several small dark shapes crept through the thick underbrush below, their massive eyes pulsed with pale purple light, their high-arched tails tipped with sharp, bony spurs that cast a blue-purple glow onto the ground. The nearest beast reached the base of his tree and froze. His system log suddenly updated with a kill entry, granting him 8 points for a shadow scorpion-tailed weasel. He had not even moved. The creature had simply dropped dead below, more gathered, drawn by whatever signal the first had been tracking, a group of perhaps 12 pairs of pale purple eyes tilted upward, locking onto his position. Several of the ones further back arched their bodies, aiming their sharp tail spurs at his platform. Watch closely, because he recognized the incoming threat just before it hit. He rolled off the platform and grabbed a thick branch he had left ready for this exact escape. A volley of bone spurs tore through the frame he had just been resting on, driving deep into the wood like close-range nails. He let go, fell the remaining distance, rolled on landing, and tracked them by the glow of their eyes. He pressed his back against the widest tree shadow he could find and met the first charging weasel as it collapsed unconscious within his aura and crumpled mid-sprint. He drove the dagger through its skull, feeling the blade punch through with almost zero resistance as warm blood ran across his hand. 6 more dropped over the next few minutes, each one going dark like a lamp. The moment it crossed the threshold of his null field, the rest hesitated, circled, and made a few more attempts that only caused them more casualties. Before finally abandoning the hunt to vanish into the dark, he sat down against a tree, waiting for his racing pulse to calm. His status menu showed mild bruising across his body from the fall, but nothing serious. He checked the log. Once he calmed down, 9 shadow scorpion-tailed weasels total. The 3 kills added 64 points to his balance. He now had 88 points. Not bad, he thought for a first night, all things considered. Then a quiet reference to the Emperor slipped from his lips without him entirely meaning it. He found a different fork in the same tree and settled in for the rest of the night, sitting upright with the dagger across his knees. He understood the situation fully. Those shadow scorpion-tailed weasels used psychic power to channel energy through their bone claws and tail spurs, making them fragile psychers in the framework his system was built from. An Untouchable's null field was known to be absolutely devastating to any soul. Sensitive beings, triggering everything from sudden nausea to instant death. In psychers who got too close, most of those creatures had not been killed. Direct combat, proximity alone had ended them. He waited for dawn, thinking it over. Eventually, he stood up and began traveling in what he hoped was the. He headed toward his original tree, checking the faint light filtering through the canopy for orientation. The forest looked the same in every direction, and he had scrambled far from his starting point in the dark. He was heading back, he told himself, not yet understanding that he had already strayed well off course. The forest was darker in the direction he had chosen, with the trees growing taller and closer together as he moved, the light overhead fading from faint to almost nothing. He stopped, reaching out to feel for trunks ahead, and understood what he had done. His scrambling in the dark during that weasel attack had disoriented him completely. Instead of working his way back toward the sparser forest edge where his platform was, he had been heading deeper into unknown woodland. Wandering blind in a strange environment was his own kind of suicide. He turned back toward the slightly brighter direction he had come from, moving carefully with one hand out until he found a spot where the trees opened enough to sit down safely. He had to solve the problem of moving at night. He pulled up the system interface and scrolled through the item list, looking for anything that gave visibility in darkness. The first relevant results were a bionic eye implant that could grant multispectrum vision and an assault helmet with built-in night vision, both required several thousand survival points, plus material costs he had no way to cover. The market was equally barren of practical options in the high-tech range. Let's be real, no beginner survivor has that kind of wealth. He switched his search to illumination and found 3 options: a homemade torch soaked in biological oil lasting about half an hour for 4 points, a broken LED flashlight of uncertain battery life for 18, and a fresh spotlight flashlight with a rechargeable port for 55. The rechargeable port on that last one would be useless without a power source. His system had a flashlight of its own, standard flashlight of conventional Imperial Forces issue, powered by liquid metal core energy cell that could be recharged via solar exposure. Charging devices or even open flame, 100 points, the note helpfully added that in a desperate situation, a fully charged energy cell inserted into a laser rifle's magazine slot could fire a single attenuated shot, and that firing into one's own head meant the Emperor's final salvation. Pretty grim. He was 12 points short. He listed his remaining half-eaten ration block on the market at 5 points, noting it had a complex nutritional profile far exceeding ordinary compressed biscuits, though its texture and smell were genuinely miserable. He listed the brittle chipped steel dagger at 8 points, the cheapest functional weapon on the market despite its corroded condition. Both sold before long, and with 101 points, he confirmed the exchange for the flashlight. It arrived heavy and solid in his hand, an all-metal casing with a simple mechanical switch. He pressed the slider and a bright conical beam cut through the forest dark immediately. He twisted the lens hood and the beam widened or narrowed, clean and reliable. It was nothing like the uncertain battery life of anything on the player market. He tightened the illumination range to something practical, took the dagger in his other hand, and started moving toward the edge of the forest. The flashlight threw large shadows across the trees, and the heavy shadows around him deepened, but the dim light revealed what truly mattered: the ground ahead. He searched for his own tracks and found them about 100 meters in, along with scattered dark drops from the blade he had used to kill the weasel. The blood trail led him back to the kill site. With proper light, he could finally see the creatures he had been fighting. The one he had stabbed was in terrible shape, its fur perforated and its bone tail sliced off cleanly. The others looked undamaged on the surface, but were clearly dead. Each one lay curled, front claws pressed hard against its head, teeth fully exposed, showing the pure agony of something that suffered extreme distress in its final moments. He recalled what he knew of Untouchables and their effect on soul-sensitive beings. Quickly understanding the mechanism, he crouched next to a carcass and used his dagger to carve the hind leg free. 2 pieces of valuable material came off separately. Skinned leg meat went for 3 points, and the energy-conducting bone claw brought in 25. The scorpion tail, sliced completely off, yielded 35. These shadow scorpion-tailed beasts use psychic power to channel lethal energy through their bone claws and tail spurs. Those materials were worth far more than the creatures themselves. He systematically harvested all 9 carcasses, taking his time with the dagger to keep each harvest clean. When he had stabbed repeatedly, was too damaged to yield a tail, but still had Usable claws, his total harvest quickly added up to 16 pieces of leg meat. At 3 points each for 48, 18 bone claws from 9 weasels at 25 points. Prepare for 450, plus 8 intact tails at 35 each for 280, with the 1 point remaining from before. His survival points reached 779. He listed the stripped remains on the market, the carcasses missing legs and claws but still containing the raw meat that other buyers might want to harvest themselves. Automatically generated listing description for those remains was actually quite embarrassing. He posted in the regional chat that fresh shadow scorpion-tailed remains were officially listed, with the leftover meat still ripe for harvesting. First come, first served. Then he scrolled the channel for any valuable intel, and he quickly noticed reports of a creepy fog appearing in the city ruins where one survivor went completely silent. Talk about ominous. He filed that warning away, back at the tree he had used as his platform. He climbed up using the notches he had cut earlier and examined what the bone spurs had done to the wooden frame he had built. Nearly every branch had been pierced, some of them almost all the way through. He pried one out with his dagger to examine it, a blunt tip, absolutely no sharp edges, not a weapon. By conventional measures, its lethality was entirely in the psychic discharge it carried. The system refused to award any survival points for single spurs, a handful recovered together only registered as a trace amount worth 1 point. He spent the rest of the night sitting upright in the fork of that tree, not even attempting sleep. Listening to the forest slowly settle around him, the sounds were strange, but no second attack came. He understood why. He had walked out of the digging ratworm territory earlier without realizing it, and the dissected weasel carcasses left on the ground were apparently keeping other scavengers at a very respectful distance from his general area. Dawn finally arrived in the double light of the purple and blue stars shifted to their daytime positions as he climbed down and drank. He finished half a bottle of purified water from storage, clearing the fog of sleep. The exhaustion finally faded. Overnight, his survival points had climbed even further. All of his listed weasel remains had sold, bringing his balance to 940. He was just short of 1,000 points. A private message arrived from user 1239. They asked if he had more complete shadow scorpion-tailed weasel materials. They wanted a full set of claws and a tail. He replied that a set of claws and one tail would cost 150 points. The buyer did not reply immediately. That was fine by him. He had bigger priorities anyway. He needed a ranged weapon. His crude combat dagger had proven its value during close combat in the dark last night. But relying solely on melee combat was a dangerous ceiling he desperately needed to break. He quickly opened his crafting interface and searched for powerful bolter weapons. It was pure instinct, the reflex of someone who had spent way too much time around this material. The results were thorough but mostly out of reach. The cheapest bolt gun was a pistol designed for astrometer and political commissars. It held 5 rounds of 13.9mm bolts with a bone-shattering recoil. It would break an unenhanced wrist, costing 1,200 points plus 10 per bullet. Ammo was sold separately. At the high end was a gilded, mastercrafted weapon. A composite bolt gun built by Terran artisans specifically for Space Marines. It fired 19.7mm bolts with 3 optional underslung attachments. Absolutely impressive, but totally useless. Laser weapons were far more realistic. After comparing his options, he settled on a laser shotgun, a black market mod. This modification boosted a standard laser pistol's output and diffused its energy beam. This allowed it to strike multiple targets nearby, packed with dual lenses and amplifiers. It was bulky enough that he had to hold it with both hands. The range fell below 50 meters with terrible accuracy, but it covered a massive area. No precise aiming was needed. Its only major weakness was a high failure rate. He quickly selected the mastercrafted manufacturing upgrade before finalizing the deal. The price jumped from 700 to 900 points. He hit craft. The gun that materialized was only 40 centimeters long and surprisingly heavy. The original laser pistol was completely unrecognizable. Its body had been elongated. Massive heat sinks were added along with an alloy grip placed under the muzzle. Coils and lenses peered through the barrel, while the rear capacitor featured something unique. A string of high Gothic letters was beautifully inlaid with fine gold wire. The system description revealed a master craftsman built this after losing a bet. He crafted it while drunk, regretting it forever, but he did an incredible job. He upgraded the focuser, enhanced the scattering lens, and added a variable barrel. This allowed switching between scatter and focus modes, dramatically improving reliability. The high failure rate of normal laser shotguns was practically gone. Scatter mode had a lethal range of 30 meters. Focus mode hit 800. It performed even better in a vacuum. He flipped the safety switch near the trigger. He felt a powerful static charge raise the hairs on his arms as he aimed. Targeting the tree where he slept, he fired. Over a dozen beams erupted. The searing light slammed directly into the solid, wooden trunk in a tight cluster. It scorched holes 15 centimeters deep, instantly igniting several small fires. He flipped the switch to focus mode and fired, a single thick beam. It punched straight through the trunk, blasting into a second tree further back. No stopping it, those 2 shots alone had swallowed up half the magazine. Scatter mode allowed 4 shots per clip, focus mode only 3. Contact 12039 messaged him while he studied the burn marks. They wanted to buy, but offered a diamond as partial trade. He scanned the details, time to consult the system. Standard bolt rounds actually required diamond for their armor-piercing warhead designs. The material would shatter upon impact, shredding targets from the inside. A raw gem was useless right now, but held serious future value. His counter, 120 points plus the diamond, take it or leave it. The buyer folded instantly, sending the crystal over to close the deal. These rough gems materialized directly inside his personal storage. A 1-point transaction fee was deducted from his end anyway, which was highly annoying. He let it slide, but saved 1239 to his contacts list. After pocketing his new earnings, his balance stood at 159 points. He immediately dropped 50 points of that on a fresh laser shotgun magazine. The energy indicator lit up completely full when he swapped it in. He placed the empty, drained cell on the ground directly outside his storage area. In a patch of indirect light, with liquid metal solar charge. He wanted to see if the technology could function under these alien stars. If it failed, he would try heating it over a fire later, time for food. He carved off a thin strip of crude ration, mixing it with water. The result was a thick paste he forced down with clean water. It tasted absolutely putrid. He stared down at his raw meat supply. There were plenty of shadow scorpion-tailed weasel hind legs in his storage. Contrast was painful. Real cooked meat would taste 100 times better. Finding clean water to prep that meat was his top priority today, along with mapping out the boundary between the forest and the desert. Pocketing the empty magazine to test the recharge, he stepped out to begin. Then he found trouble. Crouched on a branch, he spotted them. He raised the heavy laser shotgun, pressing it to his cheek. Holding it tight against his face, he mimicked the rifle stances he remembered. Even though this weapon had no stock and the grip felt wrong. With absolutely no sights, he lined up the barrel by eye, 40 meters away. They were tearing at a fresh carcass, watching him with hostile eyes. Instead of charging, they just glared. He finally pulled the trigger. The scatter beam dispersed wildly, sending dozens of energy threads into the sand. Melting the desert grains into dark glass, but some shots hit home. One blast seared straight through a beast, exposing charred bone beneath fur. Another sliced a smoking, cauterized wound right across a massive rib cage. The pain instantly triggered their fury. 7 razorback wolves pivoted toward him, abandoning the carcass to sprint toward him at absolutely terrifying, unnatural speed. Blurring like yellow streaks, they crossed those 40 meters in a heartbeat. He held his fire, waiting until they closed inside 30 meters before firing. He saw the bone blade silhouettes clustering together and fired again. At that range, the energy beams formed a near-solid net, trapping the 4 leading wolves. They had absolutely no way to escape. The searing energy threads punched straight through fur and muscle, leaving neat, charred channels behind in there. Heavy bodies slid forward another few meters before crashing to a stop. The log updated 4 times, adding 30 points each, the remaining 3. Wolves did not slow down or even try to jump. They charged the trunk of his tree and swerved sideways at the last second, slamming the slanted bone blades on their backs. Directly into the solid wood, the impact was not the expected cracking sound. It was a deep, tearing sound, as if the sharp blades parted the wood grain. Instead of splitting it, palm-sized wood chips exploded outward in a spray. 3 passes later, the tree began tilting. He stopped aiming and pointed the muzzle roughly downward, clutching the shaking branch tight as things began to lean. One wolf lined up for another run, but a spread of laser beams caught it dead on, shredding it. However, he had no chance to fire again. Because he was already falling, he let go of the branch on pure instinct, wrapping his arms around the laser shotgun to keep it from slipping away. As he crashed into the fallen canopy, it was a mess of splintering branches. The impact knocked the wind completely out of his lungs, blurring his vision with spots. He lay still for several seconds, regaining his breath while something shifted nearby. The spare magazine in his back pocket was gone, lost somewhere during the drop. The power indicator on the shotgun grip was flashing red. Time is running out. He spent 50 survival points in the system to buy a fresh magazine and swapped it in quickly without standing up. Then he started crawling forward. Toward the open space, his last scattershot had blasted through the leaves. When he took out the third wolf point blank, 20 meters ahead through a gap. In the broken canopy, he could see the sandy ground of the forest edge. He was almost through when he slid out of the leaves and froze. Standing there was a creature over 2 meters tall, built like an armored vehicle. It had the rough frame of a massive bear, but the skin was wrong. A thick grayish-brown cuticle, covered in old scratches and weird, stone-like patches, took the place of normal hide. It had no neck, no visible ears, and a pair of slit-pupil eyes sitting deep in its skull, glinting with hungry curiosity. Its forelimbs were absolutely massive, with each one ending 5 short black claws that caught the alien sunlight like polished obsidian. Its right claw was currently clutching the final razorback wolf bite, the belly effortlessly holding the beast like a light snack, and that is exactly what happened. It tossed the wolf straight into its mouth and bit down hard. Bones snapped. It ripped the sharp dorsal bone blade free in one clean motion and dropped it, turning those cold, slit eyes right toward him. He raised his weapon and fired on scatter mode from 10 meters away, aiming for the head. Most of the energy beams hit the shoulder, instead scorching the rock-hard hide as wisps of black smoke rose up. The minor scorches only irritated the beast. The pain just made it angrier. It dropped onto all fours and charged at a speed that literally shook the ground. He shuddered, then bolted immediately, weaving through trees and cutting left and right. He chose trunks too thick for the beast to plow through, forcing it to dodge. This bought him some distance. Running hard, he fired twice, hitting its chest and limbs. The stray shots only irritated the monster further. His legs were heavy as lead. His lungs burned, and the terrifying gap between them closed with every passing second. Suddenly he stopped, dropping to one knee by the widest trunk. He braced himself. He pressed the barrel against the bark to steady his badly shaking hands. He flipped the mode lever to focus, feeling the internal lens shift with a sharp hum. The beast adjusted its path quickly, lunging from the side to bypass his cover. It was leaping directly through the air at him when he finally pulled the trigger. A massive beam, far thicker and brighter than the standard scatter shot, erupted. It blasted straight out of the muzzle, striking the beast dead in the upper face. Its forward momentum stopped. Leaves rained down. He pressed tight against the bark. He waited in silence. Peeking around the massive trunk, he saw the result of his shot. A giant corpse lay there, most of its head completely obliterated. Only a smoking lower jaw remained. The system log updated instantly, awarding him 500 survival points. Exhausted, he collapsed. For several minutes, he just sat there, waiting for his racing heart to slow down. Once his body stopped shaking, he slowly forced himself back onto his feet. He spent 20 points on a bottle of mineral water from the system market. He guzzled it down, staring at the massive Chu Yen tyrant carcass, reading its name. He crouched down and drew his dagger. Suddenly, a woman's voice echoed from the thick trees. She spoke in Korean, her voice tinged with surprise, asking if anyone was there. She wanted to know if he was still alive. Instantly, he sheathed his dagger. Raising the laser shotgun, he lay flat on top of the dead Chu Yen tyrant. He used the carcass as cover, scanning the dark treeline. We all know the tropes. Novel stories always promise a loyal ally right after a big fight. But that is fiction. In this brutal reality, any approaching stranger was a threat. Anyone drawn to gunfire was either an opportunity or a fatal danger. He was not about to gamble his life. He called out, demanding a name and serial number. A slender figure shifted behind a trunk, about 30 meters deep in the forest. Her pale blue tracksuit stood out clearly between the branches, despite her hiding attempt. He aimed his shotgun at a similar tree, standing right next to her. The focused beam sliced through the wood cleanly. He warned that her tree was next. She quickly stepped out from cover, her hands raised high in the air. Her face twisted in terror and shock at the massive carcass beneath him. She introduced herself as Emo, claiming her serial number was 44,919. She asked if he was a survivor too. The question felt surprisingly naive. Her sheer innocence actually made him lower his internal threat assessment a little bit. He called it a foolish question, keeping his guard up as he approached. Walking behind her, he checked the small object hanging at her waist. It was a compact hand crossbow, fully loaded with a fresh bolt magazine. He kept the shotgun pointed forward, stepping within a few meters of her. Suddenly, her expression warped with genuine terror that no one could fake. The color drained completely from her face, her breathing turned shallow and rapid. She desperately begged him to stay back, warning that her system interface had just updated. Her system suddenly threw up a new debuff called Energy Field Interference. It described a powerful antipsionic void, suppressing her perception and decaying. Her mental power causing nausea and dizziness, she compared it to falling into freezing water with a massive hangover. Crouching, she placed both hands on the ground and asked if he was carrying something. He already knew the answer. The untouchable attribute he had mostly ignored in the rush to survive was doing exactly what the lore predicted, generating an invisible field. That was absolutely devastating to soul-sensitive beings in the area. Mew was not exactly a psyker, but her soul sensitivity was clearly high enough to be picked up by his null field. He told her to send her main panel and status interface through private messages, giving her his serial number and backing away to a distance of 5 meters. Screenshot she shared matched his own system's layout exactly, confirming the mutation was strictly confined to the manufacturing and exchange interface. The debuff description on her screen was detailed, noting that her personal space might malfunction within this interference zone and that retrieved items could be lost forever. He stared at that line, thinking back to the failed backpack activation on his first day and the puzzle pieces finally clicked together. He had failed to open his because he simply did not have a soul to link. Talk about a brutal realization. 5 meters away, Mew's color slowly returned. The look that settled on her face when she eyed him was made of deep fear, exhaustion, and a heavy revulsion she obviously did not want to show but simply could not suppress. Still, she had found a decent weapon attachment, secured basic gear, and navigated the forest entirely on her own without showing any panic. He noted her resilience without a word. He told her she could go, that he had nothing to offer her and that her presence only complicated his. He meant both. She turned to leave but hesitated, asking if he had found any freshwater source nearby. He admitted he was searching for that very thing and offered her 2 pieces of raw meat in exchange for directions. She hesitated, clearly calculating whether this bit of knowledge was her only real leverage. Before pointing forward, she told him to walk straight from his current spot for roughly 1 hour to find a small river. He carved a direction marker into the dirt with his dagger, then pulled out 2 pieces of peeled razorback weasel leg meat from storage, tossing them toward her feet. She carefully stepped back, keeping her distance as she gathered the meat, verified its description, stored it in her inventory, and vanished into the thick trees. He kept watch in her direction until he was fully satisfied nobody was following her, then turned his attention back to the 2-yan tyrant. The massive beast was far too heavy to move. Finding the laser damage on its shoulder cuticle, he wedged his dagger tip into the burned edge as a starting point. The resistance was intense, sparks flying as blade met the tough carapace. This beast was nothing like the weasels or the wolves. It felt closer to tearing open solid plate armor. He ruined his crude dagger in the first few minutes, bending the blade until the spine deformed, forcing him to set it aside. Back in storage, his balance is 729 points. He opens the interface. He buys the Imperial Standard Combat Dagger, choosing the fine craftsmanship option, bringing the cost to 400 points and dropping his balance to 329. The weapon, appearing in his hand, is covered in interlocking V-shaped metal patterns and feels much heavier than the crude version. Its description reveals that it was forged from trace amounts of adamantium powder and ceramite particles, capable of piercing space marine ceramite armor. A note suggests the material had likely come from someone's chainsaw teeth. He reads that twice and decides it is exactly the sort of thing an Admech craftsman would write. Its sharpness is On a totally different level, he has to hold back immediately because the first stroke nearly cuts through the carapace plate instead of separating it from the flesh underneath, working carefully along the lines of the body. He tilts the blade flat between hide and muscle to keep the material intact. He peels off the first full-sized piece, earning 180 points for it. The piece he already damaged by cutting multiple channels is marked as ruined material, yielding only 80 points. He works through the rest of the body for the next hour, yielding 2 intact large hides and 2 damaged ones. That brings 520 points from hide alone, plus 150 from claws, and 50 from the meat pads, plus 15 from a large chunk of meat he cuts. Away from the carcass, he strips off his bloody clothes and uses a rag to wipe himself down, then buys a fresh outfit from the market for 30 points. His balance reaches 1,124. He reviews his equipment. The mastercrafted laser shotgun handles ranged combat within its range perfectly, and the new combat dagger has proven its deadly worth at close quarters, but he lacks physical durability. He needs defenses. Another clash with something like that Qin Tyrant without armor, and he will not survive the collateral damage even if he wins. He looks at the protective gear list, quickly understanding why other survivors avoid buying it. The standard Astra Militarum 2-piece flak armor set is incredibly expensive. It costs 1,300 points and weighs up to 6 kilograms, too heavy. The full carapace armor sets are even worse, costing over 5,000 points and weighing much more. He keeps scrolling to find something reasonable. At the bottom, he finds a light flak armor lining for 180 points, along with flak plates made from ceramite and alloy for 80 points. He buys both, spending a few minutes pressing the plates into the lining slots, sealing them tightly with the built-in fastening system. The finished piece covers his torso, weighing barely over 1 kilogram while offering decent protection against small arms and some defense against energy weapons at angle shots. It is not impressive compared to the heavy gear, but it is what he can carry. 340 spent, 784 left. Now for the ultimate upgrade. He checks the gene enhancement drug entry, spending 500 points on the food additive canister. The contents are a pale yellow crystalline powder smelling of sour cheese. The instructions state that a squad single meal portion is the proper dose taken over 10 meals. He pours 1/10 of the powder into his palm and swallows. He swallowed it dry. Immediately, a violent burning heat expanded through his mouth. This searing pain forced him to his knees, gasping on the dirty ground. He quickly chugged all his remaining purified water to extinguish that agonizing, fiery sensation. Sitting in the dirt, the stench of blood from the carcass was unbearable. As the pain faded, he realized he would have to endure this 9 more times. Once he could finally stand up and move around without staggering, he got ready. He threw his flak armor over some clean clothes and checked his makeshift compass. Following the direction line carved into the dirt, he headed toward Mew's rumored river. The complete lack of wildlife along the riverbanks was highly suspicious, not comforting. Under this brutal desert heat, a river should have attracted every thirsty creature around. Instead, the desert bank remained completely empty as the sun began to rise. There were only old, faded tracks swept by the wind, no life at all. No birds perched on the rocks, and no insects crawled near the water. Looking down the half-meter drop, he noticed something bizarre on the muddy rocks below. The rocks were scarred with massive tooth marks and deep, terrifying grooves. Some gaps were wider than a clenched fist. Naturally, he kept his distance. Grabbing a stone, he tossed it directly into the center of the flowing water. The water erupted, dark shapes rushed from every direction. They moved so fast it seemed like they were waiting for bait. Long, sleek bodies and jaws packed with jagged teeth snapped wildly in the foam. Let that sink in. They literally ground the solid stone into tiny gravel. Shaken, he backed away and searched for a much shallower spot along the bank. He found a 10-centimeter drop where he threw more rocks to lure them in. Suddenly, a massive 2-meter monster lunged entirely out of the water toward him. He sidestepped the crashing beast, letting it thrash wildly on the dry bank. Repeated impacts finally began breaking down the soil of the bank. Soon, a collapsed section of the bank created a shallow pool of muddy sand. With the water only a few centimeters deep, those massive predators were helpless. He went into the woods, carved a thick wooden trunk, and flattened one end. Shaping the other end into a comfortable grip, he crafted a perfect makeshift shovel to dig. This narrow canal ran about 5 or 6 meters inland to a small pit. The actual digging was quick, but staying safe and watching the river took constant focus. Once the hole filled, he collected some of the water in a plastic bottle. He checked the system's screen to analyze the murky river water. It was drinkable after boiling, with minimal risk of sickness. There was no fatal warning. He let out a deep sigh of relief. After holding his breath for 10 long minutes, he stripped off his gear. He poured the filtered water over his body, carefully washing away the grime. All the lingering scent of beast blood was scrubbed off his body. The bloody runoff sliding back into the river sent the fish into a frenzy. He threw the stiff flak armor back over his bare, irritated skin. Using a cheap lighter he bought from the market, he started a fire near the trees. While his water boiled in an iron pot, he skewered some beast meat. He propped the meat over hot coals. By the time his meal was ready, exhaustion hit. Exhaustion threatened to drag him under, but he absolutely refused to sleep in this spot. Ground, that first bite burns him because he is just too impatient. He drops the skewer into the warm water to quickly cool down the hot grease. He tears away. Burnt outer layer and eats. It has absolutely no seasoning at all. Still, the sheer hunger rising the moment he tastes real cooked food is like nothing else. It is a primal demand that goes way beyond comfort. He eats most of the meal without taking a break, then drinks the oily broth left in his pot. Sitting by the dying fire, he feels completely drained. The heavy exhaustion of the day is finally catching up. His status screen displays a brand new effect next to his usual stats, showing that a genetic upgrade is running at 14%, reinforcing his muscles and nerves. With basic reinforcement, another screen alert explains his massive hunger. The process is pushing his body into an accelerated state, rapidly boosting how fast he absorbs energy from food and demanding way more fuel. He has already eaten enough for 2 normal meals, but still feels like he has only barely satisfied his body's needs. He bottles up 2 portions of that greasy hot water and lists them on the player market as contaminated water for 10 points each. He refills his pot with clean river water from his pit. He lets it boil while his clothes dry near the hot coals. Once the second batch is ready, he stores it away and climbs a tree with thick branches. He does not have to build a wooden frame. He ties hemp rope under his arms and around the tree trunk above him, falling asleep properly for the first time on this endless continent. The fire slowly burns down below him, but before sleeping he put his spent energy magazines inside the coals to charge. Talk about a rude awakening. A loud alarm rings. The system has sent a bunch of notifications that he completely slept through when they first arrived 6 hours ago, and his adaptation period is officially complete. A massive psionic storm is forming, with 18 hours until it hits all regions. It warns of mental erosion and chaos energy invading anyone stuck in the open. It notes some survivors could gain wild power, while others will be twisted. A safe zone beacon has also activated, directing everyone to designated safety. A transparent compass overlay pops up in his upper right vision, displaying a circular interface with a tiny dot in the center for his position, alongside 6 needles stretching across green, yellow, and red rings that display distance. 3 of these needles point directly into the forest. Behind him, 1 yellow and 2 red point into the desert. The global chat channel is flooded with panic and desperate trades for information, with survivors reporting dead friends and weird creatures, asking what this psionic storm actually is. He eats the remaining cooked meat from his inventory while reading through the panic, finding one useful piece of intel that confirms a wider needle means a shorter distance to that safety beacon. He quickly checks his indicators. The one in the red zone pointing into the desert is nearly 4 times wider than any of the forest indicators, and one of those green desert needles is roughly aligned with it. He started 6 hours behind everyone else, meaning the nearest red zone desert beacon is much further than his forest choices, but his unique null field should protect him from the storm itself. That makes the dangerous red zone much better gamble than reaching a green zone 6 hours late. Population already sheltering there. He untied himself from the trunk, retrieving the energy magazines from the ashes before walking into the desert. The heat was the same as before, the alien sunlight beating off the sand hard enough that he kept his collar pulled up over his nose and mouth. A pack of razorback wolves cross his path an hour later, moving fast and ignoring him completely, their instincts apparently overriding their predatory impulse in the face of whatever they were. Fleeing, he watched them go, then kept walking. The sky was darkening earlier than it should have for this hour. Something was shifting in the light, and the wind carried a chilling quality he could not quite name, a pressure that was not temperature or humidity. After several hours, the twin star light had shifted, and his system pushed a 6-hour warning. The widest compass needle, the red one, pointed straight toward a series of massive rolling dunes ahead, and it had gotten even wider. He crested the highest dune and stopped. Below him lay, buried halfway in the sand, the wreckage of something so massive that his first instinct was to look for a reference scale and find absolutely none. The exposed hull was twisted, scorched, and covered in dull metallic gray. Craters and tears everywhere. Snapped gun barrels littered the ruin. Armor plates had peeled and curled back, revealing dead cabling inside internal structures, the circular engines at one end tilted toward the sky as if driven headfirst into the ground. At high speed, he could not see a matching forward section, unable to tell whether it was buried deeper or had broken off before impact. At the stern end, still partially intact above the sand level, stood a Gothic-style spire. Cathedral rising from the hull, he recognized the architecture immediately. There was only one design tradition in his cultural memory that produced warships with cathedrals built into the hull. He stood atop the sand ridge, looking down, and spoke a quiet address to the distant emperor. Above, out of reflex rather than belief, then slid down into the basin. Air near the wreck smelled of metallic rust and old ozone mixed with machine oil. Fragments of the hull lay scattered across the sand, some of them carrying carved text or stylized holy images. He walked the perimeter first, scanning for chaotic markings, flesh growth, or tentacle structures and bone formations that would point to a corrupted ship, and found none. The Imperial Achilla appeared on several surfaces, covered in dried black stains but still recognizable. The Mechanicus skull and gear sigil appeared. Near what had been the engine section, he found a hull breach where the plating had been torn back by some incredible force, leaving a gap wide enough to walk through. Gun raised, he stepped inside. The interior was dark and silent. His flashlight cut through corridor walls of shattered screens and broken pipes, the dust so thick that his footsteps left clear prints. He could not read High Gothic, so the hatch markings were completely meaningless, prompting him to follow the compass needle, which still pointed deeper into the wreckage. The first thing he spotted on the corridor floor was ammunition, several large-caliber bolt rounds with the Imperial Achilla visible on the casings alongside empty magazines and scattered casings. He checked his system. He examined the intact rounds, confirming they were 19.7 millimeters. These Astartes bolt rounds were worth 15 points each on the exchange list. He spotted an empty Astartes magazine on the floor to use as a container, collecting 7 complete rounds before clearing the immediate area. He stood up, but his head bumped into something. He aimed his flashlight upward, nearly firing on pure reflex. A towering figure in purple power armor hung in the corridor at head height, pinned to the bulkhead through the abdomen by a massive, two-handed long sword. The armor stood over 2 meters tall, even sagging forward on the blade, and the surface was covered in filth and heavy damage. Its originally exquisite carvings were obscured by pink slime and what looked like small, dried-up living tentacles. The helmet was bowed, the body leaning forward so that the face plate hung precisely where his head had just been. He recognized those legion markings. Emperor's children, Slaanesh devoted traitors, and quickly fired 2 scattershots into the eye lenses anyway before he was willing to accept it was dead. Both shots connected and something inside the helmet burned. The body did not move. He spent another magazine switch, firing 2 focus shots directly through the faceplate until he could see scorched material through the holes. Still, nothing moved, and then he approached the massive longsword. The weapon was huge. Built for a space marine, with a broad blade and a long hilt his hands could only grip about 1/3 of. The system identified it as Foebreaker, a 2-handed power sword severely damaged, with its disruption field generator broken and completely unable to be activated, yet its base material hardness and sharpness still far exceeded any mortal weapon, worth 42,000 points on the exchange list. Crafting conditions were not met. He grabbed the hilt with both hands, planting his feet on the dead traitor's torso to brace himself, pulling until his face went red, but it did not budge. He adjusted his grip and tried again, and the sword shifted slightly, making a sickening sound of grinding metal and tearing tissue. Then it tilted, and the massive weight of the Chaos Space Marine armor, over a ton, pulled the whole assembly right off the wall. He let go, scrambling backward as the corpse hit the floor with a concussive thud, shaking dust from the ceiling. The sword came loose during the fall. Stepping onto the body for balance, he got both hands firmly around the hilt and pulled it out. He stored it away. Immediately before that massive weight could crash down across his legs, he replaced the expended energy magazine, continuing to follow the compass needle deeper into the ship. Fresh blood stopped him cold. Everything before this had been old stains, black with age, but these were bright red, still wet. Leading deeper into the corridor with messy footprints alongside them, he crouched low, sweeping the flashlight across both ends of the dark passage, holding the laser shotgun forward. The prints were human-sized, showing a distinct tread pattern, not in Stardies and definitely not an animal. The trail led around a corner and he followed it, weapon raised. Mew was slumped against the cold corridor wall at the end of the bloody trail. Her light blue tracksuit was soaked through with blood from terrible wounds across her torso. Her abdomen was torn open, one hand broken with jagged bone clearly visible. Her face was twisted, and her eyes were wide, the expression of someone who had witnessed something in her final moments that her mind simply could not comprehend. Her crossbow was missing, completely replaced by a shattered, twisted mess of broken plastic and metal bolts scattered across the floor. He stood there silently, staring at her corpse, a grim reminder of how fast this brutal world can end a capable survivor. He quickly knelt down to inspect the items scattered across the cold floor. She had actually harvested the razorback wolf carcasses he had previously left behind, and her inventory spilled out upon her death, leaving behind raw meat, 6 razorback wolf bone blades, 2 full bottles of clean water, a box of anti-inflammatory meds, and 2 chocolate bars. He quietly put everything into his own storage. Then he noticed a human-sized footprint pressed neatly right at the edge of the blood pool, leaving a perfect tread pattern behind. This was no accident. Whatever killed Mew walked on 2 legs, and it was incredibly strong. It had torn her body apart with its bare hands before stepping in her blood. He did not waste time. His trusty compass needle urged him deeper into the massive ship. Soon, the dark corridor opened up into a sprawling, cavernous hall. Yellow warning lights cycled, casting a shifting amber glow over everything. Massive metal plating had been dragged together to form crude defensive barricades along the walls. Old bullet impacts cratered the steel. Thick cables dangled from above, like dead vines, with bright blue electrical sparks snapping and crackling wildly at the exposed tips. Clearly, some core parts of the ship still had active power. The ground below was heavily stained with patches of old, dried blood and dark burn marks, though the ventilation system still managed to keep the air clear. The trusty compass needle that had guided him since the desert edge vanished entirely the moment he entered. Now, that is never a good sign. He had barely begun looking for a safe, defensible corner when a sudden, sharp, metallic strike rang out from the deep shadows across the hall. Just great. He raised his laser shotgun instantly, throwing his flashlight beam toward the noise as a hatch slid open on the far side, revealing a strange, hulking shape stepping out. It staggered forward with heavy, clumsy strides that made a harsh, metallic grinding noise. The creature stood about 1.7 meters tall, but its body was profoundly wrong. As his light beam focused, the horror became clear. The left side was rusted. Metal plating and grinding gears, with frayed, sparking wires dangling from its joints. Meanwhile, the right side was covered in a mass of dark, pulsating red flesh, wrapping around the cold steel bones like a sickening parasite, sickly, nerve-like. Cords and small writhing tentacles tightly bound its robotic arm. Its head was split down the middle, a dim red lens on the left, and a fleshy growth with a twitching eye on the right. A thick, fleshy tentacle hung from its jaw, brushing against a speaker unit in its mouth to produce a harsh, raspy static. A distorted voice emerged, blending broken digital tones with wet, biological groans, muttering warnings of system failures and unauthorized trespassers. Then, its red robotic eye suddenly flared, and it lunged forward, charging straight across the hall at him. He recognized it instantly, a basic Imperial labor servitor. But this poor unit had been abandoned in the ship long ago during the initial collapse. Now dark warp corruption had twisted its flesh into a mindless, moving nightmare. He did not hesitate. Raising his shotgun, he readied himself as it closed the Distance switching to scatter mode and squeezing the trigger at point-blank range. Laser beams blast its chest, burning charred pits straight through the metal plating. It vaporizes fleshy growths on the other side, unleashing a sickening stench. A mix of burning metal and rotting flesh, the brutal impact slows it down. But it does not stop. He retreats behind heavy cover, keeping up a barrage of relentless fire. Emptying 2 full magazines directly into its chest plate. He systematically blasts holes until one perfect headshot lands. That finally snuffs out whatever keeps it alive. The massive machine stands frozen, then collapses hard. It hits the floor. The system awards 450 points. After the kill, a secondary system prompt pops up. Repairing it requires intact biomass and extra plasto, and circulation fluid, costing 920 points. This will create a completely customized servitor, capable of following his basic commands. He looks down at the twisted pile of metal and burned flesh. His current system balance is 734 points short of the total repair. But a helper that can stand watch is incredibly valuable. Handling these heavy physical tasks is worth far more than 920 points in the end, especially for the long, dangerous survival road ahead of him now. He already knows the only available source of biomass. He goes back for Emu, finding the long, dark corridor looking exactly as he left it. But it is not. He rounds the corner expecting her body. Instead, he finds the scattered items are completely gone. The blood pool is cleared, but fresh footprints are pressed deep into the dried blood clots. Even worse, Emu's body has been moved from the dark wall. She is no longer slumped in violent death. Instead, she lies flat. She is laid face up in the exact center of the pool, with her eyes closed. Her twisted expression of terror remains, but her eyes are shut. The torn clothing on her chest has been carefully arranged to cover her wounds. Her broken hand is folded neatly over her chest, right over her intact hand. It is absolutely not random or messy, strongly suggesting someone did this with extreme, deliberate care. Someone did this deliberately, he calls out into the dark. He demands to know who is there, scanning both ends of the dark corridor with his weapon. No one answers. He holds his position for tense minutes. Only his heavy breathing fills the empty silence. Whoever did this is either gone or choosing to remain completely hidden in the silent darkness. The footprints match that same human-sized tread pattern from before. There is definitely someone else on this ship. Talk about a chilling realization. He crouches down beside Emu's body, whispering quietly that cruel circumstances have forced this choice. He sincerely hopes that whatever lies ahead is better than this. Anything is better than rotting in a dark corridor. He reaches out. Placing his hand on her cold body, he issues the storage command, and she instantly vanishes. He sprints back to the main hall, not slowing down until he reaches the lights. Back inside the amber-lit room, he starts spending his market profits. The items he listed actually sold while he was on the move, boosting his total points. His total hits 1,229 points. He selects the repair option. The reconstruction process begins, quiet and deeply unsettling. Watch closely. Some mechanism in the system drags Linu's body out of storage. It floats beside the servitor wreckage, enveloped by a pale blue scanning beam. Reconstruction begins now. Damaged parts start to move. Twisted metal straightens and rust vanishes, running backward like time itself. Next, the exact same terrifying transformation process begins right on Mew. But this is not healing. It is something far colder and brutally efficient. Precise lines appear across her body, separating her components with perfect accuracy. Speed too fast for him to follow. Her skull opens as neural bundles slide in. Her flesh is stripped away, blending with bioplastics to fill the new metal frame. Nerves are carefully separated and fused directly with heavy cables. Every single non-essential part is cleanly and brutally discarded. The Adeptus Mechanicus wastes nothing, reusing every gram of biological flesh. Once the blue light fades, a brand new servitor stands in the hall. Long metal strips now cover its face where her cheek muscles used to be. A cold metal speaker assembly now completely replaces her human mouth. Red light from artificial eyes stares at him with cold mechanical focus. Its synthesized voice reports that its service protocol is officially rebooted. It confirms authorization, standing by as Unit U-3342. He just stares. Turning his head away, he reflects on what this faction designed these machines for. Any disgust he feels is an emotion this cold culture never even considered. In this brutal world, his only real concern is what orders to give next. He simply buries the horror as the cost of his own survival. Filing the memories away as the cost of survival, the storm hits. An urgent system alert suddenly flashes across his vision, warning him of danger. He expected the warning, but the complete lack of physical sensation is jarring. Everything remains quiet. 3 meters away, U-3342 reports. It speaks in a flat, electronic drone, describing the chaotic scene outside. Dark warp energy floods everything, deflecting around a 5-meter protective sphere. This forms a protective barrier right around his current position. Lethal psionic forces pile against the shield, failing to break through. Safe inside the null field, he cannot see any of the terrifying chaos outside. Flickering amber lights and sparking cables are all that remain visible. The system confirms a Geller field is active. He asks the unit for details. It confirms the defense, explaining that Geller fields block dangerous energy. However, solid physical objects can easily pass right through the field. When he asks if they can cross, the unit agrees. He steps forward. The pale, shimmering barrier stands between him and the dark corridor ahead. Instantly, the second he steps through, the scene changes completely. Thick, glowing purple mist completely floods his entire field of vision. Strange psychic arcs flicker as a monstrous roar echoes. He just walked straight out of the null field, leaving himself completely exposed. Leaving Unit U-3342 behind, he realizes his mistake too late. Spinning around, he sees the servitor frozen at the edge of safety. Frost and scorch marks are already chewing through its metal armor. The raw warp energy is rapidly destroying it. He races back to help. He backed out through the barrier and called the servitor. Its audio. Receptors were completely scrambled by the screaming warp around it. But it still managed to find his voice the moment he re-entered its range. The strange blue-purple mist vanished, making him clearly visible once again. He led the machine through the Geller field barrier, keeping it close. Once they were both inside, the warp erosion stopped immediately. They searched the enclosed area within the barrier and found nothing except a single passage at the far end, blocked by a heavily jammed hatch. The door was thick metal deformed into the frame by some immense impact. He could not move it. He ordered U-3342 to open it. The servitor inserted its four-fingered alloy palm into the deformed gap, its electronic muscle. Fibers engaged with an audible hum, prying the hatch open to half a person's width. Before it jammed completely, the machine reported its mission was complete in the same flat tone it always used. The passage behind the hatch was devastated. The floor covered in scorched carbon stains and scattered metal from destroyed weapons. He found the shattered remains of a rectangular boarding shield, made of plastile and ceramic composite, riddled with bullet holes that had spiderwebbed the material without piercing through. Its structural integrity was gone, but the raw material remained intact. He stored it, noting a grim description. The moment a shield bearer fell in a narrow corridor, those behind them died within seconds under a hail of fire, a harsh reality indeed. Anyway, the passage ended at a wide secondary control room, filled with shattered consoles and bulkheads scarred by energy blasts and kinetic impacts. 3 broken, long-handled battle axes bearing gear and skull motifs lay scattered across the floor, their power field components completely ruined. Several figures in tattered red robes were slumped over the control console, and through the scorch marks and bullet holes tearing their fabric, he could clearly see that what lay beneath was definitely not human flesh. There were complex mechanical augmentations, conduits, and biological tissue fused so deeply with machine parts that no boundary existed. These were tech priests, and they weighed far more than ordinary men. He failed to turn one over, so he ordered the servitor to flip them face up on the floor while he stepped back to watch. The servitors alloy palm grabbed the first robed figure by the shoulder, pulling it free. From the console, something fell from the robes as the heavy body moved. Hitting the floor and discharging, a blinding beam of blue light erupted from the device, burning a clean half-meter wide hole right through the console. The molten metal liquefied and dripped, filling the ruined room. With the sharp stench of vaporized iron and heavy ozone, the beam died quickly. He was already pressed against the wall, raising his laser shotgun. On the floor, right near the fresh hole, lay a compact pistol. It featured a dark gray metal body and black composite grips. A short, thick barrel was surrounded by rings, still glowing with blue light. The plasma containment assembly was still humming with an active charge. A strange geometric crest was etched onto the side of the weapon. He saw a star, totally unlike the skulls and imperial designs plastered everywhere else. On this ship, he checked the system details without actually touching it. A relic-pattern plasma pistol, dating from the dark age of technology, its power was completely superior to any modern imperial mastercrafted plasma weapon. And perfectly optimized for him, it was worth 42,000 survival points in the system shop. There were no manufacturing options available. A standard imperial plasma pistol was only 2,000 points, and the mastercrafted version cost 2,800, showing just how insane 42,000 really was in practical terms, but the ammunition pricing was painful. Each extended energy cell held enough heavy energy particles for 6 standard shots, costing 250 points. Requiring rare machinery to recharge once empty, he stared at the screen, thinking for a moment about the savage Chu Yan tyrant and that towering chaos space. Marines, knowing a plasma weapon would have obliterated either of them, he quickly bought one extended energy cell. Luckily, the pending sales he listed earlier had all cleared during the transaction, causing the system to deduct 2 cells instead of one. It seemed to apply his confirmation to both items. He checked his balance, finding 2,139 points. He felt too satisfied with the payout to care about the accidental extra purchase. The relic pistol's magazine slot matched the standard Imperial design perfectly, which made complete sense if the Imperial weapon was just a cheap copy of this older design. He loaded an extended cell, ensuring it clicked into place, and safely tucked the plasma pistol away alongside his power sword and laser shotgun. He had arrived on this world practically naked, with only 2 meager survival points. Honestly, his private stash was already worth more than most other survivors on this continent could amass in weeks. He ordered U-3342 to stop moving the tech priest bodies, scanning the dark control room for any other hidden loot. While the massive psionic storm screamed outside, his eyes drifted over to the remaining tech priest corpses. A sudden greed flared up in his chest. He ordered U-3342 to drag the remaining bodies down, waiting out the awful scraping sounds before stepping back inside to see the 3 dead priests laid flat on the floor. Their bionic bodies were heavily mangled, leaking dark machine oil, coolant, and stale organic fluids. White bones peeked out through decaying flesh. These 2 were nowhere near as wealthy as the first leader. Most of their components were ruined with shattered cybernetics and bent tentacles, but he salvaged a few good items. A functional bionic eye sat within one shattered skull, alongside an intact laser cutter and 2 working torches attached to their mechanical limbs. Using the eye required major surgery and 1,500 points from the system, and he had zero desire to turn into a metal machine, so he pocketed it. With the torches salvaged, the remaining metal collapsed into a heap of scrap on the floor. He felt extremely satisfied. A plasma weapon was something even an elite Imperial officer could rarely get their hands on, and a relic value was easily comparable to a Space Marine's gear. He packed up and led U-3342 deeper through the dark passage, arriving in a wide open area that resembled a massive pipe hub. Tangled pipes and heavy cables of all sizes converged from every wall, the air choking with heavy grease, rust, and decay. A musty stench clings to the dead air, the floor slick with thick grime. This Imperial warship should have carried tens of thousands of regular crew members. Yet he sees absolutely no standard weapons or gear belonging to ordinary soldiers. A battered boarding shield proves a brutal breach did happen here. But where are the skeleton remains, the armor, or even the discarded weapons? Before those grim questions can settle, a massive crash echoes from diagonally above. Something drops from a wide vent shaft and slams heavily onto a lower pipe. The heavy impact leaves a massive dent. His flashlight beam cuts the darkness. It reveals another corrupted machine servitor, looking far worse than the last. Its spine is bent completely backward, wires and shattered metal showing through. Exposed wires hang like dead snakes, while bones pierce overgrown flesh. A hard fall has ruined its legs, leaving it entirely unable to move. Thick black slime and machine oil leaks slowly from its ruptured frame. He knew there had to be more of these monsters lurking in the dark. He orders Unit 3342 to watch for any targets. He points the laser shotgun upward, but the real threat lies elsewhere. Scraping sounds echo from a nearby shaft, coming closer by the second. He kills his flashlight and aims his weapon down, waiting in the dark. The faint red emergency light flickers as something lands with a soft thud. He clicks the flashlight on, illuminating a terrified middle-aged man. Man Jang Jongguk wears greasy overalls, his face pale with pure exhaustion. One hand blocks the bright beam, while the other rises in surrender. When ordered not to move, the man desperately shouts back in accented Mandarin. He begs the soldier not to fire, claiming to be a survivor. He warns that a metal monster is right behind him, urging them to run. The gun barrel does not budge as the soldier barks out a demand for his credentials. He stammers his name, Jang Jongguk, identification number 55801. They reached the safe zone late, followed a compass, and found a dead girl. Her stomach was torn open, but they could not locate their primary unit. Even stranger, the radio claims their missing allies are still waiting right there. Jang Jongguk explains that their shelter was an unsecured worker lounge with clothes. The heavy blast doors failed, allowing massive stone bears to slip inside. A brutal clash between beasts and machines gave the group a chance to flee. They scattered in the dark, and Jang Jongguk scrambled down these piping shafts. The soldier links their comms. Jang Jongguk recites his ID back correctly, 73481. Man's answers match the security protocols, letting the soldier relax slightly. Those stone bears are likely terrifying predators, and the machines are clearly corrupted. When asked what weapons he has, Jang Jongguk pulls out a crude blade. It is just a rusted metal strip with a handle made of cloth. The soldier looks at the pathetic weapon, then down at his own plasma pistol. Suddenly, violent metallic clanging echoes from the shaft right above them. Jang Jongguk goes utterly pale. The soldier orders him to hide in the corner. He takes up a defensive stance alongside Unit 3342. Another corrupted servitor crashes down heavily onto the iron platform. This one has a jagged metal pipe welded directly into its arm like a spear. Its red optical sensors flicker wildly as it charges right at them. The beast barrels forward, its razor-sharp mechanical claws aiming right for them. Claws tear off a flesh-covered arm, but the initial attack slows. Cheng Feng instantly fires his laser shotgun on focus mode, striking its head directly. No brain, it collapses. The mechanical shell completely shuts down. Spasming wildly, it emits broken electronic static before going completely still. A clean headshot always works on these servitors, and his flashlight sweeps around. Beam illuminates U-3342, revealing his mechanical face to Zhang Jiangguo. Total terror, Zhang Jiangguo shrieks and bolts straight into the pitch-black hallway. He drops his crude weapon in panic, running with absolutely zero hesitation. Defeated, the system awards 450 points for the kill. Cheng Feng has no desire to chase him into these highly dangerous shadows. Too risky, instead, he guides U-3342 through charred corridors. They reach the edge of a colossal shaft, plunging into endless, bottomless blackness. A massive, rusted elevator cage sits waiting behind a locked metal gate. Level 4, faded Gothic letters label the power bay lift. The nearby cogitator screen still flickers, but the hand scan is quickly denied. No Mechanicus seal, he bypasses the terminal and moves to manual controls. Cheng Feng grabs the emergency override lever on the console and pulls it down. Chains groan, a heavy metal platform slowly rises up from the dark. The heavy iron cage stops, and Cheng Feng steps inside. Once U-3342 follows, he pulls the lever to descend. Pitch blackness, the heavy cage tilts awkwardly as they descend. His flashlight beam reflects off twisted pipes and shattered structural wreckage. After a long descent, a ghostly blue glow begins to rise up. A sudden halt, the elevator stops, and he holds his breath in awe. An incredibly massive circular atrium lies buried deep within the dead vessel. Towering steel pillars and endless cables support the titanic structures around them. Right at the center of the cross-shaped metal walkway stands a magnificent device. Sweeping arches, huge metal structures rise high above a cooling base. In between those colossal pillars, a swirling core of pure power crackles. A deep blue plasma sphere, only a few meters wide, surges violently. Ghostly light washes over everything, accompanied by a heavy mechanical hum. U-3342 runs a scan, confirming it is indeed a running reactor. A running reactor, how could it possibly operate on this ancient shipwreck? His loyal robotic companion silently points toward a dark corner near the wall. Shadowy figures, several mechanical shapes move stiffly near a massive pile. They are tossing the debris onto a conveyor, feeding directly into the core. Bones and wreckage. Through the blue haze, he realizes what they burn. They are throwing shattered armor, heavy weapons, and piles of human bones. The plasma core barely runs on this fuel, a desperate struggle. The precious Gellar field is barely active as they creep forward together. Ruined corridors. The circular pathway is littered with old battle scars. The pile ahead consists of shattered war gear, armor, and human remains. 6 industrial servitors work tirelessly to keep the dying machinery fed. Unlike U-3342, these ones are severed at the waist and mounted on track chassis, one arm ending in a 3-tooth mechanical claw, and the other in a laser cutter, their heads encased in metal, with respirators embedded. The flesh, their movements are slow, their treads grinding with discordant sounds, clearly nearing the end of their lifespans, yet they show no signs of chaos corruption, having worked tirelessly in this enclosed power core area. Protected by the Gellar field running on preset programs, as long as they do not attack proactively, he has no reason to clash with them, destroying them might collapse the Gellar field in the safe zone. His gaze shifts to the mountain of fuel. The system's item identification tags let him pick out valuable targets from the chaos in minutes: 2 intact Mars Mark IV laser rifles and 1 heavy lumberjack gun adapted for Auburn bone needs, using .050 caliber solid armor-piercing rounds. He plans to use U-3342 as a tripod for the lumberjack gun, just as he drags the 3 weapons free from the scrap. An industrial servitor stops, turns its sensors toward him, and announces in a flat electronic voice that all materials here are sacred Imperial assets under technical custody regulation, and he must return the items immediately. He tries explaining that they will be shredded and burned as fuel anyway, and that giving them to him is resource recycling, but the servitor replies that its logic chain cannot recognize the command. He gestures as if putting the things down, and while placing the laser rifles at his feet, stores all 3 weapons in his subdimensional storage. The servitor scans him, nothing. It reports a logic conflict. After a few failed attempts to query a superior unit, it triggers some protection mechanism and returns to its workstation as if nothing happened. These old servitors cannot handle anomalies that exceed their underlying logic. He settles in a corner to eat roasted meat with gene enhancer powder and waits patiently for the servitors to reveal more goods from the depths. He is just about to look again when boom, an earth-shattering explosion erupts from a nearby elevator shaft. The entire platform shakes violently, followed by metal twisting and snapping and the dull impact of something massive slamming hard onto the floor. Dense smoke pours from the collapsed shaft, and amid violent coughing, 3 panicked figures scramble out: a young man in a baseball cap with a gash on his arm, a tall, thin man leaning against the wall, and a third clutching a broken leg. 2 of the lumbering industrial servitors move toward them, casting oppressive shadows. The young man in the cap and the thin man scramble for the corridor without hesitation, while the injured companion watches them flee and begs them not to leave him, but the servitors roll past. They ignore him, heading straight for the damaged elevator shaft. They determine it has no repair value and begin dismantling it for fuel. The abandoned injured man snaps out of his fear and limps away. He circles around to approach the 3 shaken survivors, asking which team they are from. They are completely unfamiliar with Jang Jianggak, but when the use notices U-3342, he shouts a warning. He tells the unit to fall back, and the tall, thin man stares in disbelief. The 3 survivors quickly explain. Inside a warehouse-style safe zone, they ran right into a giant, blue-skinned beast. The creature stood nearly 3 meters tall, boasting an ant-like head with massive compound eyes. With pincers like industrial shears, it tore 5 of their 9 teammates apart. They fled blindly, stumbled into dangerous servitors, and finally found an elevator. But it crashed halfway down, nearly killing them, before he can finish speaking. A deafening tearing sound erupts from above. The deformed elevator wall is ripped completely open as a massive, 3-meter-tall figure crashes down onto the wreckage. It is the exact blue-skinned monster they just described, covered in thick armor. Its massive mandible pincers open and close with a chilling sound. Compound eyes gleam with ferocity, his pupils contract sharply. This monster's oppressive presence far surpasses the Chu Yan tyrant. He raises the plasma pistol and fires without hesitation, sending a searing blue beam right between Its mandible pincers. It erupts into a blinding ball of light, but the beast lowers its head to take the impact head-on, then shakes its head and roars. Suddenly, its attention is seized by something much stronger. It locks its compound eyes onto the plasma reactor at the center of the chamber, drawn by energy similar to the ion beam from his pistol, completely ignoring the humans. Its powerful hind limbs surge, launching the beast headlong into the churning azure. Plasmasphere, the reactor-level energy engulfs the beast instantly, and its body visibly carbonizes and disintegrates in seconds. It struggles briefly, then vanishes into the azure radiance, turned into additional fuel, a system log. Appears, granting 4,300 survival points for a juvenile ant ox. His eye twitches. At the word juvenile, ant oxes can easily tear through starship plating with their forelimbs, and a single adult can slaughter an entire small starship. He does not dare bet on how many expired ant ox canisters might still exist in this wreckage or when they might break out. Everything happens far too fast. The three survivors are still dazed by the plasma pistol and the ant oxes. Suicide when the reactor's low hum suddenly turns sharp and piercing. Its stability is visibly declining as the indicator lights on the walls begin to flash wildly. The plasmasphere contracts sharply, and then the light within the containment field vanishes. The reactor shuts down entirely, and backup power activates, giving absolute priority to maintaining the Geller field in the core area and basic life support. The backup power will last 4 tera-hours. The electronic voice makes the announcement in Gothic, so only he understands it. The three survivors look bewildered, saying it sounded a bit like English and seeming to realize it is some kind of warning. 2 emergency task options surface in the vision of everyone present. Task 1, called Core Reboot, offers 5,000 survival points, a safe zone reboot, and an equipment crafting opportunity. The objective is to follow the industrial servitors to the lower deck, obtain and install spare parts to repair the reactor within a 4-hour limit, with a warning that deeper, more dangerous areas are involved. Task 2, called Preservation of the Spark, offers 1,500 survival points, a miniature Geller field generator, and a deep vehicle modification opportunity. The objective is to find and submit a functioning Geller field generator core, carrying at least 1 intact core processing unit from a normal servitor to reach the mid-deck. He must reach the broadside hangar to find or repair a usable vehicle, despite a warning that doing this will cause the safe zone to shrink or collapse. He looks at both options for just a second, immediately sensing the sheer malice of the survival system. These 2 tasks have an obvious massive conflict, anyone choosing the second task stands directly against those choosing the first, because fixing the reactor becomes useless with the generator gone. But this place is crawling with beasts. Waiting here is asking for death. The only real escape is modifying a vehicle. He instantly selects Task 2. Meanwhile, the 3 other survivors quickly reach a consensus of their own. Task 1, repair the reactor. The tall, thin man speaks with a decisive tone, turning to win him over. Out of pure, basic compassion, he warns them that this area is unsafe and will soon be overrun by far more dangerous threats, urging them to choose Task 2 and escape. Immediately, the tall, thin man's voice suddenly rises, calling him crazy for wanting to dismantle the safe zone while a psionic storm rages outside, and the baseball cap youth backs him up. The 2 exchange fierce looks and begin advancing aggressively. They are ruthless. They can easily abandon a wounded ally, and honestly, these guys are bad news. As the tall, thin man pulls a machete and swings at him, while the baseball cap youth lunges. With a dagger at his stomach, a cold light enters his eyes. The plasma pistol fires. Absolute chaos. Azure light completely swallows the tall, thin man's upper body, vaporizing his blade. Half his torso is gone. No wail scream. The kid's dagger hits home. It strikes heavily against his heavy chest armor, the steel tip breaking off cleanly. His nanofiber undersuit underneath simply cannot be pierced. U-3342 reacts instantly as the blow lands, classifying the youth as a hostile. It drives a heavy mechanical arm into his spine, piercing clean through. Total agony. Screaming erupts across the power bay. U-3342 confirms fatal damage is dealt, tearing the dying youth free from its cold metal arm before tossing him aside. The body goes still. After a wet gurgling sound, silence, staring at the half-vaporized corpse created, he feels absolutely nothing, but the other mangled body makes him Wanna throw up first time killing, it leaves deep scars. The wounded survivor with the broken leg collapses to the deck, desperately scrambling. Away, he will not execute him, he suppresses the churning in his stomach, ordering U-3342 to stay close. The priority is completing their mission and escaping this hellhole. After accepting the second task, the compass interface changes. The red display is replaced by a solid orange field with only two hollow arrows of varying thickness pointing in completely different directions. He targets the heading of the wider arrow first and begins marching. U-3342 scans a deck map they find posted at a dark corridor crossing, and when ordered to lead the way to the Jellerfield generator, the unit's scanners read the map. It starts guiding him through the labyrinthine corridors without any hesitation. The long corridors are eerily silent after an hour of winding through. The vessel U-3342 halts before a damaged 5-meter-tall armored hatch, with deep radial marks in its center and cooled metal slag splattered everywhere. A Gothic label overhead reads Shield Equipment Bay. Inside, a massive mechanical structure dominates the entire area. Countless thick cables and power lines wrap around the ruins like giant pythons. This machine was shattered and destroyed a long time ago, yet his mysterious compass arrow does not point at the ruined Titan. Instead, it guides him toward a quiet corner, where a humming 6-meter-tall rotating cylinder is securely encased in a transparent outer shell. He places his hand directly on it, attempting to submit the high-tech cylinder to his system. A prompt asks if he wants to submit the Jellerfield generator core. The moment he confirms, the massive generator vanishes, as if snatched away by something unseen, leaving a massive gaping hole in the vessel, leading straight outside, letting space sand pour in alongside sparks from severed cables. Almost instantly, the surrounding Jeller field collapses. The barrier loses its continuity, making his current location within the wreckage highly critical. Dangerous chaos energy now begins pouring into certain vulnerable areas. As he is exposed to the shrinking field, the mist disappears from his sight entirely, his rare passive trait as a powerful Untouchable makes him completely immune to this terrifying, corrupting energy. He does not linger, rapidly following the second arrow on his compass alongside U-3342. They head straight toward the broadside deployment zone. The map recorded by the machine changes everything, but their journey becomes more perilous. You can feel the tension as lights flicker violently. Crossing a wide storage deck, he suddenly stops and pulls his metal companion back. Peering through collapsed crates and a gap in the ruptured floor below, he sees a monster. An adult antox, far larger than any juvenile, is currently feasting. Its massive body radiates a heavy, terrifying pressure. Deep blue chitinous shell glints under emergency lights. Its terrifying pincers easily tear apart Chuyan tyrant carcasses, stuffing large chunks of meat into its mouth. He gestures to U-3342 to bypass it. But the machine cannot comprehend simple hand gestures, and its heavy metal body steps heavily onto a loose metal plate. With a loud thud, the feeding beast instantly jerks its head, locking its crimson compound eyes and thermal vision right onto him. Furious, it tries to leap through the gap. He runs without looking. U-3342 follows, its metal legs clattering rapidly. They sprint as fast as possible, after chasing them for nearly 2 long minutes. The heavy footsteps abruptly stop, replaced by furious, distant roars. In the screech of tearing metal, the giant antox seems to be fighting something else. He leads U-3342 further away, resting against a damp wall. He catches his breath, feeling relieved that the beast is not pursuing them. Then he pulls a bottle of water from his storage and drinks it deeply. He wants to soothe the burning in his throat. He looks at U-3342 standing nearby. In the dim light, its half-mechanical face looks exceptionally eerie. He commands the machine to report its current status. It replies that by the will of the Omnissiah, all structures are completely intact. Its biological systems are stable. He jokes that the flesh is weak. Only the machine is strong, before telling it to continue leading them forward. The corridor slowly widens, revealing mechanical arms and repair bays. He heads along the bulkheads, passing through a completely failed airtight door, revealing a massive hangar that stretches for dozens of meters. He stands on a second-floor walkway, looking down at rows of empty berths below. Open loading decks are littered with twisted railings and wing fragments. Everything is scattered around, but further ahead, the view gets even worse. Armored vehicle wrecks, landing craft, and crushed transport planes are piled on top of each other, forming a massive steel graveyard. He sees overturned tank turrets without guns and ruined fighter jets, with wings impaled on troop carriers and scorch marks everywhere. Someone was scrambling an emergency deployment right before this ship crashed. They were preparing a massive landing, just as he steps forward to explore. Looking for a usable vehicle, a strange figure stumbles from a side hatch. His movements are weirdly twitching and completely out of control. This stranger wears an ever-shifting colored robe adorned with eerie geometric symbols, his face hidden behind a bizarre, exquisite metal mask. His only visible features, his eyes, glow with a ghostly, mad blue light. He clearly hungers for forbidden knowledge. Spreading his arms, the figure shouts. He calls our protagonist a fascinating variable, promising to offer his soul. Straight to the Lord of Change, he immediately aims a laser shotgun. The creature claims to serve the Great Plan as an interpreter of Fate, a chaos sorcerer of Zech. He pulls the trigger immediately. There is absolutely no talking to a raving lunatic in this place. Honestly, everyone here is totally nuts. The powerful laser beam erupts, but just half a meter from the sorcerer, it hits an invisible prism. Hexagonal patterns flare up, instantly scattering the shot into harmless light. The crazy sorcerer mocks him, quickly weaving hand signs to summon a swirling ball of blue fire that rushes straight toward him. But as it enters his range, it sizzles like water on hot iron. The magic is completely destroyed, leaving no smoke. The shocked sorcerer freezes. His psychic fire, frost, and lightning all vanish the exact same way. He stands there waving his hands, yelling out useless spell names while our hero just watches with pity. This grimdark universe is too brutal. This guy has completely lost his mind, and that pity deeply triggers him. He stops his useless spell casting, staring back with those eyes. The creature leaps back, his voice trembling with shock and fanatical rage. He screams that our protagonist is a godforsaken child of the void. He calls him a blind spot of fate and a perfect research subject. Since elegant magic cannot touch him, the sorcerer resorts to crude methods. His immense psychic power surges, targeting the mountain of vehicle wreckage instead. With a horrific, grinding sound of twisting metal from across the room, several heavy armored vehicles and massive landing craft fragments lift off. They fly straight toward him, forcing him to quickly switch his weapon. He fires his plasma pistol, the blue beam exploding into chaotic energy. Turbulence ripples violently across the sorcerer's invisible psychic shield, making the sorcerer's body shakes violently, completely unfazed by long range attacks in this grim setting, no matter how advanced the technology. The best way to handle a psyker is simple: get close. With a cold blade, he holsters his plasma pistol and draws a combat dagger, its monomolecular edge gleaming with a deadly, pale light. Massive wreckage rains down like a collapsing mountain. He spots a gap in the deck leading to a wide trench, ordering 3342 to follow, and drops straight through the opening. Overhead, the heavy debris crashes nearby, sending a violent shockwave of dust and metal down the trench. He calculates the distance to the sorcerer, about 12 or 13 meters of open ground. A direct charge is too slow, so he instructs 3342 to use its massive mechanical arm to launch him toward the enemy. Without hesitation, 3342 braces his hip with one claw and his foot with the other, delivering a powerful, sudden shove. The immense force hurls him forward. He hits the deck, takes 2 rapid strides, and rolls toward the sorcerer. The instant he crosses into a 5-meter radius, the enemy's threatening shrieks dissolve into wails of absolute agony and terror. His untouchable field is completely severing its link to the warp, erasing the psychic energy and dark knowledge that granted its power, replaced now by pure void. Its source of twisted wisdom and dark blessings from its master dry up. Instantly, the sorcerer curls tightly, clawing at its mask, writhing end. Twitching on the deck like a puppet with its strings severed, he lies nearby, letting a savage smile slip. Oh, here comes the fun part. Crawling forward, he raises the precision combat dagger and slashes at the connection between mask and robe. The monomolecular blade meets absolutely zero resistance. Instantly, the muffled wailing stops. The twitching body convulses violently before finally falling dead still. The shifting, color-changing robe slowly fades to a lifeless gray. The system awards 3,500 survival points for neutralizing the Chaos Psyker. He cleans his blade on the Empty robe and stands up. Already, the sorcerer's corpse is beginning to disintegrate into pale ash. Its powers were useless against his untouchable nature. And in close quarters, a psyker without warp protection is incredibly weak, barely stronger than a normal human. He notes that the kill brought in a massive haul. He orders 3342 to scan the surrounding area. For any remaining energy anomalies or active threats, the machine reports. That severe interference blocks its sensors. Of course, his untouchable presence blinds him to any nearby warp storms or anomalies, and under such intense disruption, the servitor's scanner is completely useless, shaking it off. He carefully guides 3342 deeper into the massive graveyard of metal. The debris, previously fused together by psychic force, now shifts loosely. As 3342 steps forward, its heavy weight causes the structure to groan and buckle. System prompts identify the crushed remains around him: a destroyed Sentinel Walker, a shattered Chimera troop transport, a ruined Lemon Rust battle tank, an endless cascade of red ruined markers acting as cold tombstones. He surveys the graveyard grimly. Then, right in the middle of all those destroyed markers, a faint blue prompt flashes. He lies flat, peering through a crack, spotting a wrecked orbital assault lander. Inside its marker sits a Rhino armored personnel carrier, labeled as lightly damaged. It is like treasure buried inside a mountain, visible but out of reach. He asks Unit 3342 to locate it precisely, and it starts scanning. The Rhino is trapped inside the internal cargo hold of that orbital lander. It is accessible through a top armor rupture, but the main hatch is blocked. It is covered by the remains of 2 Sentinel Walkers and heavy debris. Debris that Unit 3342 cannot safely move. He checks his subdimensional storage. With only 2 cubic meters of space, he feels a brief wave of helplessness. But then he realizes if he cannot lift the wreckage, he can collapse it. He asks Unit 3342 to calculate the pile's key support structures. Red infrared beams immediately light up several vulnerable spots. Targeting those hidden positions, he pulls out his plasma pistol, ready to fire. He fires 3 scorching plasma beams in rapid succession at the marked targets. Vaporized, melting structures groan loudly, sliding and completely collapsing. He backs away quickly with Unit 3342 as the dust settles. The massive debris slides right off the lander, exposing a giant tear. He cools the molten edges using 100 points of cheap, untreated sewage. He signals Unit 3342 to lift him, carefully squeezing inside. Through the tear and into the dark, ruined interior sits a green machine. Standing nearly 5 meters high on its racks, its thick armor is scratch-covered. It is structurally solid, and surprisingly, this variant has a massive upgrade. A twin-linked autocannon turret sits on the roof. He walks to the hatch. He deploys the ladder, turns the valve handle, and pulls the door open. The interior is incredibly spacious, with the cockpit and passenger compartments separated. Empty weapon racks line the center, flanked by metal seats along the walls. Slipping into the driver's seat, he locates the start button on the panel. He whispers a prayer to the machine spirit and presses it, hearing a hum. Indicator lights flicker to life, and the massive engine suddenly roars with power. The system announces that the mission, preservation of the spark, is complete. Hearing the engine's deep roar, excitement surges through him. He selects his target. He designates the Rhino armored personnel carrier as his primary target. He carefully considers his materials, noting the vehicle already has twin-linked autocannons. He currently has nothing in his possession more powerful than those heavy guns. After deliberating, he selects a laser rifle as one of his materials. Next, he adds a miniature Geller field generator, hoping to merge them. Connecting it to the power system will protect the occupants from chaos energy. No separate power source needed, but of course, a red error flashes instantly. A core component is missing, as the mission requires an intact core processing unit. Specifically one from a normal servitor, a line he had skipped right past. A rogue servitor core will not work, and other than Unit 3342. Only the heavy industrial servitors in the power bay are functioning normally. Getting their cores means attacking those massive machines, which is incredibly risky. They have light armor cages and mounted laser cutters, making it a nightmare. It is a nearly impossible task, requiring him to return to the power bay where the feeding Antox waits. The system detects U-3342, guarding the breach of the lander, offering it as an available advanced servitor unit, asking if he wants to submit it to complete the Deep modification. Several faint, sharp howls echo from the deep corridors of the ship. His hesitation vanishes. A plasma pistol could destroy an industrial servitor's limbs, but returning to the power bay with an adult. Antox, there is a pipe dream. Staying means certain death. He looks at U-3342 through the cockpit window, feeling a genuine reluctance he cannot quite explain for a servitor he has known so briefly. Then he selects and confirms. A blue light flares, disintegrating the unit. Above the abdomen, as its mechanical components are dismantled, it floats upward. It merges into the vehicle's body, alongside the Jellerfield generator and a laser rifle from his storage. The rhino's metal shell begins behaving like a living entity, devouring the materials. Binary prayers ring out uncontrollably. Through the vehicle speakers, the melting, writhing dashboard really terrifies him. For a moment, making him think he will also be devoured, but the system confirms. The fusion modification is complete. The Jellerfield generator now sits in the center of the vehicle, thick cables securing it to the chassis. A 5-meter field bubble now envelops the entire vehicle. The chaos energy that was previously invisible now appears as dry ice fog surging. Along the ground, the upper torso of U-3342 is embedded in a groove on the side of the turret basket, its eye sockets filled with new metal components, transforming it into a fire control servitor capable of operating the vehicle's weapon systems. Looking at the system description, he lets his eye twitch. The new twin-linked autocannon on the roof now has an additional 4-barrel rotary laser gun and a scanning array of small radar and sensors to serve as the fire control servitor's eyes. He climbs outside to inspect the exterior and finds the vehicle looks almost unchanged, but visibly newer, as if even the paint was reapplied. He climbs back inside, pulling the gear lever, and the tracks begin to operate. The armored vehicle tears through the already twisted assault lander hull with staggering power, forcing its way out of the metal wreckage. But after looking around for a long time, he finds no passage wide enough to leave the hangar. He asks U-3342 to scan for an exit. The machine responds through the comms, its voice coming directly through his helmet. A screen on the dashboard shows him that at the ends of the parking bays are upward opening armored hatches, some at surface level with chaos energy pouring through their gaps. U-3342 marks one damaged hatch and requests authorization to fire at its fixing mechanism. He tells it to fire. 2 shots from the autocannons strike the mechanical structure, and the hatch, weighing at least 10 tons, tilts outward under gravity and slams onto a sand dune, forming a ramp. Chaos energy rushes into the hangar. The Jellerfield flickers violently before stabilizing. Fine grains of sand rustle against the vehicle's shell as the massive rhino drives down the half-meter drop. Fresh out of the hangar, heavy treads crush the tilted ramp. He plunges into the raging psionic storm outside, sliding sideways. He stops, taking one final look at the massive wreckage behind him. Under the grotesque sky, that shattered silhouette looks like a giant metal tomb of endless secrets. He turns his gaze forward. Into the chaos storm, he slams the pedal straight down. The armored beast swerves, charging hard up the desert slopes. Out here, it is a nightmare defying all known physics. Suddenly, patches of sand freeze over and thick sheets of frost right next to them, spontaneous towers of silent flame ignite on bare sand. Weird, pale lightning strikes the ground. The horizon twists, distant sand dunes warp like a hallucination. Horrific things wander here, shimmering earth elementals made of sand. Glowing light drift alongside grotesque, flesh-twisted monsters that crawl with shattered bones. Talk about an absolute hellscape. They scream inhumanly. He briefly shuts off his defensive field to test his immune powers. Frost still covers the sand not far away. But the unnatural fire and lightning vanish. The monsters remain. They are real now, physical matter merged with dark energy. Sickened by their grotesque shapes, he quickly flips the shield back on. The armored rhino's heavy frame and massive treads keep him rolling with unstoppable momentum over the soft desert. After finishing his second mission, his compass acts up completely. The map lights up with dozens of pointers, like a complex star chart. He focuses, and the display instantly enlarges right before his eyes. A massive green arrow points straight into the deepest desert wasteland. He locks onto it. Instantly, his chosen target path lights up gold as the other glowing pointers fade away. He cranks the steering wheel and slams down. the gas barreling at nearly 100 kilometers per hour in this monster. He finally feels the pure joy of speed in this barren world, steering with just one hand. He casually pulls some cooked meat from storage to snack on, but then dark red blood splatters his windshield. The system logs 30 kill points. A monster crushed. Before he can even process it, the sand 50 meters ahead suddenly erupts like a violent volcano. A colossal beast bursts out, easily the size of a subway car, measuring over 6 meters wide, covered in segmented purple armor dripping with thick, glowing slime. Where its head should be is a circular, horrifying lamprey maw, packed with rows of sharp, bony teeth and writhing, spiked tentacles. A massive nightmare thrashes, churning up an absolute sea of sand as it lunges for his armored ride. Honestly, he thinks with deep resentment. This is a sandworm. Is this system seriously targeting him personally right now? But his grip remains steady. He spins the wheel, racing in the opposite direction while ordering Unit 342 to open fire at will. The rear turret immediately swivels, locking onto the giant beast's face. Heavy 30mm high-explosive rounds start flying. Heavy fire blasts into the sandworm's gaping mouth, targeting its fragile throat. It shreds the roots of its thrashing tentacles as massive explosions erupt, shattering carapace and tearing flesh spray everywhere alongside thick, glowing blood. Torn meat rains down across the sand, while several flailing appendages are blasted off at the roots, making the beast howl in agony. Its massive body writhes, but terrifying momentum still carries the monster forward. It slams directly toward the rhino, but he jerks the steering wheel. The massive vehicle dodges with shocking agility, carving deep tracks into the sand. He drives in tight circles, exploiting the giant monster's terrible turning radius. With the beast struggling to turn, the autocannon targets its main body. Each heavy blast tears away massive chunks of the beast's outer armor. Laser beams melt its joint armor before armor-piercing shells penetrate deep inside. Massive detonations trigger from within, causing the sandworm's body to lock up. Letting out one final, agonizing shriek of despair, the giant beast crashes. Its massive body collapses onto the dunes and goes completely still, 5,000 points. Talk about a massive ripoff. He stares at the system notification in disbelief. He had only driven in a few circles, and the monster was already dead. This massive creature is somehow worth less than a single young Antox. If this giant beast ever crossed paths with that Antox, it would get shredded. The foul stench of the dead worm seems to ignite the chaotic desert. Suddenly, the sand around the carcass begins to writhe with disgusting movement. Vile creatures crawl directly out from the pools of dark blood. They have human-like shapes, but their bodies are made of writhing flesh. Lacking any facial features, they only possess a snapping, circular mouth. Serrated teeth drip with burning acid, and their limbs end in bone blades. Pale, jagged bone spurs protrude sharply from their elbows and knees. The moment these flesh hounds emerge, they instantly begin tearing into each other. They feed on nearby mutated tissue, their bodies swelling and deforming. As they gorge themselves, new bone spurs erupt violently from their backs. Dozens of these beasts spot the rhino and turn in perfect unison. Sensing fresh prey inside, they launch a frantic charge on all fours. He orders 3342 to open fire and eliminate the targets. The autocannon roars, sending 30mm shells into the horde. Direct hits vaporize them into blood mist as the rotary laser gun fires. Its crimson beams burn them to ash, but there are simply too many. Monsters swarm from every direction, clawing desperately at the vehicle's armor. He spins the vehicle in tight circles, letting the heavy tracks grind them down. They crush the monsters with a sickening crunch, but then the cannon stops. Talk about terrible timing. 3342 reports the ammo is completely dry. With the main gun silent, he suddenly notices something incredibly bizarre. Surprisingly, the roof laser's kills are not registering on his system log. Instead, the logs only jump when the heavy vehicle physically crushes them. Realizing they only die from impact, he slams his foot on the accelerator. He drifts in continuous circles until the very last monster is crushed flat. He parks the rhino and orders 3342 to scan the area. With targets detected, he swings open the armored door of the passenger compartment to inspect for any hull damage. The lower half of his vehicle is almost completely covered in filth with crushed flesh-hound corpses stuck inside the track drives. Gritty desert sand clings to those nasty fragments, finding no obvious Structural breaches, he climbs back inside. The fuel gauge still reads over half full, but a red warning shows his autocannon ammo is depleted. Meanwhile, his survival points sit at 20,189, 30 hounds and 13 mutants. Added 5,550 points. Feeling rich, he opens the market. At 25 points each, he buys 300 rounds of 30mm autocannon ammo, instantly costing 7,500 points, but that firepower is worth it. Next, he drops 300 points to recharge his laser rifle before looking at armor. His basic bulletproof vest has only taken a single hit and has barely any damage. Still, to stay safe, he decides to upgrade to proper full-body protection. Options in the shop are dizzying. Alongside carapace armor, he spots heavy void armor from the Solar Auxilia, Spire Hunter gear from the Necromunda, Hive World, and even rare power armor used by Inquisitors of the Inquisition. The costs range from tens of thousands all the way to millions. After a quick decision, he spends 5,700 points on Storm of Vengeance military standard carapace armor, keeping 6,689 in reserve. He lays the heavy gear out to inspect it. The full set has many parts. There is also a base undergarment, which he puts against his skin after stripping off his clothes that had started to smell, noting with a bit of pride that the gene-strengthening serum is already showing some seriously impressive results in his physique. He fumbles through the awkward process of strapping on the chest piece and limb guards, slowly encasing his body in hard composite materials and reinforced ceramic plates. A thin layer of sweat forms, moving around is smooth, but his footsteps become incredibly heavy. He spots several loose cables with nowhere to plug them in. He grabs the helmet, and as it slides on, everything goes pitch black and stuffy. Panicked, he rips it off and sits back in the driver's seat, holding it tightly. After examining the complex faceplate carefully for a few minutes, he realizes he has to buy the power pack. Separately, he groans. Talk about a classic system cash grab. The Universal Power Pack costs 1,500 points. It is described as a high-capacity energy pack, holding 1,000 standard units, enough to run the gear for a week. With no other choice, he spends the points. When he pulls the heavy metal pack out of virtual storage, he nearly drops it. He slides it into the alloy slot on his back, connects the cables, buckles up, and instantly feels the immense weight make him stagger until he quickly grabs the driver's seat armrest. When he slides the helmet on this time, the heavy locks click and the respirator kicks in, completely venting out the stuffy air. This Storm of Vengeance military helmet features an advanced visor that enhances his vision and adapts to harsh lighting, alongside an encrypted communicator and a full-face respirator. His wrist screen features a built-in tactical scanner for hostile detection and remote communication. Drawing his heavy laser rifle immediately projects a tactical targeting crosshair in his field of view. It is incredibly. It turns out the full set and its power pack weigh nearly 30 kilograms. Wearing it is simply too exhausting right now, so he strips off the heavy torso and limb armor, keeping only the close-fitting combat suit and combat boots. He throws a basic bulletproof vest back on over them. The expensive carapace armor goes straight into storage. He sits back in the driver's seat and grips the steering wheel. The Rhino vehicle lets out a low roar, moving through the sea of sand, following the compass needle as it pushes forward through the howling storm. Perhaps because the vehicle is caked in blood and filth from those flesh hounds, he encounters absolutely no attacks on the road. But here's the thing: a deep sense of unease grows stronger in him. Twisted figures condensed from shadows and malice begin appearing on the sandy ground, all converging in the same direction he is traveling. He asks 3342 to scan ahead. It reports high-intensity chaos energy interference, but acoustic analysis confirms sustained explosions, multiple weapon discharges, and intense crossfire roughly 3 kilometers ahead. He slams on the gas. On a wide street in the city ruins ahead, 40 or 50 people are rushing toward a building not far away. A middle-aged man stands at the front of the crowd, shouting hoarse, desperate commands. His name is Wang Noah. He wields a scrap iron shield and a long blade of white bone. He is basically the closest thing they have to a leader. He directs them to fall back into the half-collapsed building ahead, putting those with ranged weapons to the back. Melee fighters hold the entrance. Their weapons are totally randomized: sharpened metal poles, machetes, crossbows, and even a few pistols. Then a young girl trips A digging ratworm with a purple-veined carapace charges right at her. A young man thrusts a makeshift metal pole spear at its side. The strike lands but fails to kill it, only making the creature angrier. Wang Noa charges over, slamming his scrap iron shield into. The beast then slashes its neck with his bone blade, green. Viscous blood sprays out, and the digging rat struggles and goes still. Someone yells that these worms are tunneling paths for other beasts. Wang Noa pulls the girl up, pushing her forward. Move. Everyone runs. Suddenly, a deafening explosion rings out as Wang Noa detonates. Improvised explosives in the ruins, roaring for everyone to get inside. The entrance is relatively intact. A heavy door with welded patches is held open, guarded by two men with shotguns. But as they surge through, the ground on one side collapses. Digging ratworms have tunneled underneath. Several yellow figures shoot out like lightning. They are razorback wolves, but far larger and heavily mutated. Their light yellow fur is mottled with patches of missing hair. Large patches of dark red flesh swell on their exposed skin, with hard keratinized scales growing over the pulsating tissue. Some heads have even split in two, showing rows of razor-sharp teeth. Their bone blades are huge and twisted, glowing with the exact same eerie energy. As the chaos storm outside, just their movement ripples through the air, making people feel their very minds scattering. Wang Noa's eyes widen. He raises his bone blade and shield in absolute fury, but these mutated razorback wolves attack everything in sight, even each other, and the digging ratworms. Chaos erupts. Two shotgun guards open fire at wolves lunging toward the desperate crowd, buckshot blasts spraying thick blood over the beasts. Survivors scramble inside. Meanwhile, Wang Noi and a few other melee fighters coordinate with gunners to cover their rear. Suddenly, the heavy alloy door screeches shut, instantly blocking out most of the wild roars and impacts. Inside, everyone hears a chilling, heart-stopping sound. Claws and bone blades are scraping against the metal door. Inside the packed hall, Wang Noi loudly directs his people. Melee fighters are told to team up with the shotgunners and guard the second-floor entrance, while those with ranged weapons must group up to provide support as the situation demands. In the corner, mechanics in overalls are dismantling small lathes, welding gear, and electronic workbenches. Suddenly, a young man wearing goggles, his face lightly smudged, hands Wang Noya bottle of water. His name is Lee Sunung. He warns that Big Brother Shu's group is also facing massive pressure on the east side, using up almost all their explosives to repel the last wave. Their supplies are running incredibly low, especially vital chemical ingredients. Wang Noi quickly gulps down the fresh water and tells Lee Sunung to move the workbenches to the third floor first and see if they can buy resources from the market. Their survival system is quite unique, but get this, instead of directly trading for finished items, they utilize a special crafting tech tree that unlocks progressively from basic blades up to firearms and simple electronics, extracting metals and compounds from the ruins. The ruins by decomposing them. For them, this city ruin is a massive treasure trove. Their smart custom combination of firearms, explosives, and scavenged resources lets them hold a position that no group using simple blades could ever defend. Wang Noi became their leader because he once saved Lee Sunung's life, and partly due to his military background. He quickly wipes his face and glances at a hand-drawn map hanging on the wall detailing defensive zones and resource points. He says quietly that they must hold out just until the storm passes. Suddenly, a math impact far worse than any before slams into the alloy door from outside, shaking the entire hall and leaving a massive 5-finger dent in the metal. Everyone freezes. A true nightmare has just been drawn right to them. Those heavy pounds on the alloy door sound like death knell war drums. Each strike deepens those 5-finger dents and shakes thick dust from the walls around the frame. The welded metal patches groan under the unbearable strain. Up on the second floor, a trembling lookout warns them that there are several Chuan tyrants and mutated beasts outside. Their strength has reached an even more horrific level. Their mutated bodies stand nearly 3 meters tall, each swipe of their giant claws shattering the concrete. More mutated razorback wolves howl wildly along the perimeter while digging ratworms claw frantically at the first-floor walls. Wang Nu orders everyone up to the third floor immediately, telling them to grab every single supply. Meanwhile, he and his fighters set their remaining explosives along the gentle, ramp-style stairs connecting the first and Second floors, planning to lure the beasts onto the steps before detonating them. They will figure out another plan afterward, but as everyone scrambles, a dull roar echoes. An engine, accompanied by chaotic sounds, shakes the walls. Leon freezes. The noise is drawing closer. Engine roars. Gunfire and heavy music. It is a powerful battle anthem with an incomprehensible chant that somehow feels incredibly solemn, yet thrilling. The lookout suddenly shouts in excitement, urging everyone to look outside, 2 kilometers away on a sand dune. He checks the scanner on his bird divination device, calmly reading the battlefield. He instructs U-342 to mark the highest threats and prioritize wiping out the massive beasts. The system, U-3342, quickly confirms 3 mutated Earth-type targets, 17 mutated canine beasts, and a massive horde of minor threats. Staring at the deep red markers flooding his vision, he feels no fear, only pure excitement over the massive haul of survival points. He orders U-342 to scan the survivors' weapons, revealing 17 ancient projectile firearms and a meager pile of low-grade explosives to rack up survival points and gather info on these humans. He decides to intervene. He slams his foot down, sending his armored rhino charging toward the besieged stronghold. Steering through the sand, he absent-mindedly fiddles with the comm system, but the empty frequencies prove these survivors lack any electronic communication gear. Tapping the screen, he discovers several stored audio files with grand, high Gothic titles such as Praise the Emperor in Imperial Glory. He plays one at random. Low chant begins echoing in the cabin, building into a stirring electronic beat with dark lyrics. His blood instantly starts to boil and adrenaline surges in rhythm. He cannot help but hum along, flooring the gas pedal even harder. As the heavy vehicle jolts, he accidentally hits the switch for the external speakers. As intense Imperial techno blares across the dunes, U-3342 opens fire with the autocannon. The 30mm armor-piercing explosive rounds shred the terrifying razorback wolves like paper, blowing them in half. Talk about an absolute slaughter. He rams through the beast carcasses, pushing forward. The 3 mutated can tyrants, currently bashing the steel gate into scrap metal, are blasted right in the center of their massive chests. Heavy explosions rip through muscle and bone, tearing open massive bloody wounds over half a meter wide. The colossal beasts collapse with a heavy thud before finishing their final shrieks. U-3342 fires follow-up shots to their skulls to finish them. Next, the rotary laser sweeps across the battlefield rapidly, decimating burrowing pests and common razorback wolves. With the tracks locking hard, the massive vehicle slides to a halt right before the battered stronghold gate. He takes a deep breath. Now it is his turn to make an entrance. After confirming the rhino is stopped, he quickly dons his heavy carapace. Cool armor is essential, even if there is no power assistance. He easily ignores the massive weight, pulling a Mars pattern Mark IV laser rifle from storage hatch open. He jumps down, ordering his drone 342 to keep absolute watch and fire on approaching threats before stepping up to the crumbling alloy gate. The warped metal frame has it jammed completely tight. A bit embarrassed, he activates his Auspex scanner. The first floor is clear. He quickly draws his glowing plasma pistol with one hand and fires 2 brilliant blue beams, severing the jammed alloy gate from its frame. The heavy door topples backward as glowing molten metal drips from the cuts. Inside, Wang Noi, Lee Sunung, and the other second-floor survivors stare down in total shock. Everything is changing. Framed by chaotic dust and blinding light, a strange black armored figure appears. They have never seen anything like it. His red visor eyepiece glows ominously. The uniquely shaped weapon in his hand is clearly not from this world. It is unreal. He bursts into their sight with an entirely different style, like a high-tech warrior crashing a low fantasy game. Dead silence, it fills the room. He walks in holding his heavy laser rifle. His helmet's enhanced vision cuts through the thick dust effortlessly. Scanning the crowd, his helmet completes a rapid threat assessment. Their primitive weapons pose absolutely no danger to his thick armor. Walking to the base of the stairs, he looks up and tells them to stay calm. His voice hoarse from sheer tension, Wang Noi asks who he is. He identifies himself as a survivor with ID 73481, boldly asking which person among them holds ID 992. Wang Noi admits it is him, letting out a soft sigh of relief and signaling the others to stand down. Though his guard remains up, he asks if he arrived from elsewhere to answer the safe zone emergency mission. The warrior shakes his head. No mission. The special alert only went to survivors currently inside the safe zone's boundaries, excluding him entirely. Confused, Wang Noi wonders how he navigated here so perfectly with this, without any quest guidance, casting a worried look outside at the massive rhino. Leon cannot contain his excitement. He eagerly leans out from behind Wang Noi. Adjusting his goggles, where did he get gear from another technological era? He and the rest of the group have worked incredibly hard just to develop simple pistols, shotguns, and a few basic explosives. Meanwhile, this stranger looks like he stepped out of a high-end sci-fi film. He chooses to give a vague but partially true reply, citing special opportunities. When he woke up, he was near highly advanced technological ruins. Of course, he keeps the secret about his unique system entirely to himself. Wang Noi is far more focused on a much more pressing problem. He asks how he managed to cross the deadly psionic storm to reach them. Noting that even inside sealed shelters, anyone exposed to the leaking energy went insane or mutated into horrific piles of flesh, he stares intensely at his visor, trying to glimpse something behind the armor. Before the warrior can speak, Wang Noi quietly orders his men to bring out some of their lucky awakened survivors. They bring out several pale-faced men and women whose eyes are flashing with an eerie light. These survivors successfully withstood a devastating, chaotic psionic storm. But the second they look at him, a young girl screams in terror. An agonizing, piercing shriek erupts from her mouth, echoing through the room. She looks exactly as if she is staring at the most terrifying sight in the entire world. Her pupils instantly constrict as she staggers back in pure panic. She clutches her head tightly, screaming in absolute horror that he is a complete monster. To her, he is a walking black hole, a rift of absolute and endless nothingness. His crushing presence devours everything, completely pulling her soul into a bottomless and empty void. She desperately struggles to shrink away, terrified of being swallowed by his dark, quiet aura. Almost simultaneously, the expressions of the other psychers completely change. Their mental perception is far less sensitive than the young girl's. Even so, they still feel an unimaginable, suffocating silence near him. One of them forces himself to stay calm and frantically shouts at Wang Noi. In a trembling voice, he demands that they make him leave immediately. The room becomes tense. Ordinary survivors cannot see what the psychers perceive. But the raw, violent panic of the psychers is all too real. Terrifying words like monster, black hole, and devour echo through the crowd. Instantly, everyone's deep fear of him skyrockets to a whole new level. Guns rise with a sharp clatter of metal. Wang Noi's face turns grim. Things have gone completely south, and he never expected this development. He demands to know what they are seeing and what he actually is. The protagonist understands exactly what is happening in this moment. Normal untouchables are usually just loathed and feared by everyone. But these hypersensitive psychers are directly experiencing the crushing, absolute weight of his terrifying nature. Wang Noi questions him under a barrage of suspicious gazes. He simply asks what there is to explain. He saved them, and that's that. As for what the psychers see, their own powers are simply too fragile. Because of that, they simply cannot comprehend true, absolute silence. Wang Noi chews on those words, unable to judge if it is truth. Either way, his purpose was never to stay and make friends. Saving them was purely accidental. Information and potential trades were secondary. And since these survivors are unable to accept his terrifying presence, there is absolutely no reason for him to waste any more time. He bluntly tells them that it seems he is not welcome here. They should consider the crucial intelligence he shared as a simple parting gift. Ignoring their trembling weapons and terrified stares, he grabs his laser rifle. He turns around decisively, stepping out through the collapsed gate. Someone mutters blankly that he just left, while Wang Noi cannot find the words to speak. No sound comes out to ask him to stay, despite his life-saving help. But the near collapse of his psychers is simply too shocking to ignore. The leader needs time to process this and unite his people. After leaving the building, he does not return to the rhino immediately. Mutated razorback wolves and 3 massive xenotyrants lie dead on the ground. These monsters mutated under pure chaos energy, leaving behind valuable, hardened carapaces. Those mutated bones and bizarre tissues might hold special energy or valuable materials. Worth some major collection points, he pulls out a finely engineered combat dagger. from storage and begins cutting, its monomolecular edge easily slicing through tough hide. Unfortunately, the sheer power of the autocannon left almost no good meat intact. Still, he harvests a rock-cleaving talon from a mutated Chu Yian tyrant, along with several crystalline spine blades harvested from the razorback wolves. The collection entries scroll rapidly through his log, pushing his survival points up to 15,269. Up on the second floor, survivors watch him loot the spoils of war completely unbothered, and their mindsets begin to shift. Fear is still heavy in the air, but a darker emotion is sprouting. One survivor with shifty eyes leans in close to Wang Noi and whispers, gesturing toward the incredible military equipment inside that armored vehicle parked outside. Getting their hands on those weapons would change everything. Wang Noi instantly snaps, telling him to shut his mouth, though his own gaze is incredibly conflicted. That instigator is Zhou Gu, and his desperate crew lacks Wang Noi's self-control. Zhou Gu and his small faction are the ones who make their explosives, making their entire group inherently unstable and incredibly greedy. His terrifying power scares them, but that armored ride is just too tempting. They huddle up, muttering in hushed tones, convinced of one crucial thing. He is still flesh and blood, no matter how strong he has a back. And they can drop their deadliest homemade bomb right on his head. Once that dark thought takes root, greed completely overrides their fear. Meanwhile, he stores the final crystal blade, totally unaware of the plot. He stands up satisfied, his score now 15,269. Turning back toward the rhino, he reaches to open the main armored door. Suddenly, a flashing red warning fills his helmet visor, explosive projectile detected. The U-3342 system, packed with combat data, goes on high alert. Its scanners lock onto the incoming threat much faster than he can react. The heavy autocannon swivels and raises its barrel with unbelievable speed. Moving far faster than any human, two 30mm shells blast from the barrel. The first shell scores a direct hit, obliterating the attacker instantly. He is vaporized without even a scream, the crude bomb slipping from lifeless fingers. Meanwhile, the second shell detonates directly against the third-floor wall. It strikes the falling bomb midair, triggering a massive secondary chain reaction. A violent shockwave erupts, nearly a pound of high-energy military explosives detonate, sending razor-sharp concrete and shrapnel flying outward with devastating force. The blast is absolutely massive, tearing a giant hole right through the wall. Bricks and debris blast outward in a violent wave. He saw the warning and tried to dive, but there was zero time to move. The brutal shockwave slams into his back like a giant iron hammer. His heavy carapace armor feels weightless as he is launched through the air, flying several meters before crashing hard and rolling uncontrollably across the rubble. Most of the flying shrapnel slams heavily into his armored truck, sounding like a torrential downpour of metal rain against the rhino. It leaves deep scorch marks and heavy scratches all over the vehicle hull. Barely any dents are on the vehicle, only the roof turret's scanning array is damaged. Coughing and dizzy, his internal organs feel like they have completely shifted. Lying flat on the ground, the health status icon on his system interface blinks. The screen immediately flashes a pale red, with multiple warnings of minor internal injuries, bruised limbs, and a concussion. Fortunately, his armor held. It saved him from worse, but the constant ringing in his ears and the burning pain in his body are like gasoline poured onto his suppressed rage. He orders Unit 3342 to unleash suppressive fire and kill any resistors. The unit reports that its scanning equipment is damaged, preventing independent targeting without an external data link. Still lying down, he raises his arm, activating his bird divination scanner. He scans the building ahead, transmitting the exact coordinates to Unit 3342. The autocannon roars instantly, firing 30mm shells that tear into the second and third floors where figures are moving. Devastating explosions shatter the windows, sending building debris and flesh flying. Everywhere, screams are completely cut off, drowned out by the thunderous blasts. Wang No instantly realizes what is happening and shouts combat orders. But deep down, he knows their situation is already far beyond repair. A rogue attack by a few fools has dragged their entire group into a deadly clash with him. He pushes himself up, drawing his laser rifle. He stalks back toward the building, rage making his carapace armor feel weightless. The scanner data merges perfectly with his helmet display, highlighting every target. He can see every single enemy clearly through the thick walls. It is basically X-ray vision. Anyone foolish enough to attack him gets cut down within seconds under a crushing wall of firepower. The autocannon, rotary laser, and his rifle leave them absolutely no escape. The survivors panic, retreating deep inside. This is no longer a fight. Let's be real, this isn't a battle anymore, it's just a clean execution. He pulls the trigger, letting the system markers guide his deadly aim. Lethal red beams flash through walls, striking targets behind cover. For those cowering behind thick metal plates, he brings out a plasma pistol. A massive azure beam vaporizes both the metal barrier and the enemies behind it. Nothing remains but a molten hole, absolutely terrifying, efficient, and precise. He clears them floor by floor, acting like a merciless killing machine. After he guns down a dozen hostiles who try to fight back, the remaining survivors break down completely, cowering in dark corners. Many beg for mercy, while others flee toward the higher floors. Up on the third floor, he finally corners Wang No and his last few men. Wang No is pinning down a struggling man whose face is twisted in anger. It is Joyu, the instigator behind this entire foolish ambush. Wang No shoves Joyu forward, pleading for him to spare the innocent survivors. Joyu screams at Wang No, calling him a coward before demanding his own death. He yells that he never expected to survive falling into his hands anyway. He watches coldly, refusing to move, while Wang No tiredly closes his eyes. When those eyes open again, only a dead, gray emptiness remains inside them. Without a word, he drives the bone knife into Ju's back and through his chest. With a clean, decisive motion, Ju looks down in utter disbelief at the protruding tip. He opens his mouth, collapsing to the ground after coughing up a large puddle of blood. Wang Noi pulls the knife out, letting the blood drip, and explains calmly that the culprit is executed, surrendering and asking him to spare the rest since most did not participate. He pauses, pointing downstairs, adding that during the recent chaos, his men had already placed all the remaining explosives on key load-bearing structures of the second floor. If he insists on wiping them out, they are prepared to perish together. He holds a pressure switch detonator, already pressed down. Even if he gets shot dead, it slips from his grip. Wang Noi's decisiveness catches him off guard. Now watch how he plays this hand. Culprit is dead, he won't pursue this further, but they must never let him catch anyone else plotting against him, claiming he isn't a bad person or some bloodthirsty madman. His rage has been vented through the killing, leaving him feeling like an absolute stranger to himself, the nightmare. Figure steps over blood, corpses, and scattered supplies, disappearing from view. Wang Noi finally breathes a deep sigh of relief, ordering his men to quickly disable the signal receivers for the second floor explosives. He collapses weakly onto the floor, clutching the detonator, completely unaware that he paused for a brief moment on the dark stairs, having noticed a glittering piece of advanced technology near a corpse, which he casually grabbed along with a few bottles of clean water and a bag of sweet biscuits before heading straight for the Rhino armored vehicle. The moment the heavy crew door closes and locks, he collapses inside, ordering Unit 3342 to stay alert. That thick metal barrier seals off the raw horror and chaos of the outside world. He leans back against the freezing metal wall. Sliding down, you can almost feel the sheer weight of exhaustion hitting his body. Nerves begin to fade, waves of sharp pain and dizzy spells from his body remind him of the narrow escape. He rips off his helmet, breathing air thick with oil and copper, slowly unbuckling the heavy carapace armor. Piece by piece, he takes a long drink of clean water, leaning against the inner wall, panting until the wave of dizzy sickness passes over. He cannot stay exposed. Dragging himself into the driver's seat, he glances at the deadly quiet building and fires up the engine without any hesitation. Rhino crushes through gravel and bloodstains, carrying him far from the gruesome conflict deep into the ruined streets until he spots a hidden, quiet corner. A few hundred meters out, half-collapsed walls form a perfect natural screen, while keeping him safely tucked inside the green barrier of the safe zone. He parks, meticulously checking the autocannon ammo reserves and his fuel level. He places Unit 334 on maximum alert, ordered to kill. Then Unit 3342 reports that their combat data link with the bird-shaped scout system is down, while the vehicle mounted scanning array is heavily damaged, making wide-area surveillance impossible. Still, he puts his lightweight bulletproof vest back on, climbing onto He climbs onto the roof to inspect the damage, checking the twin-linked autocannon turret. A piece of sharp building debris from the explosion has pierced its scanning array. The fragment is still lodged deep inside, destroying the delicate wiring and crystals. Completely ruined, he spots 4 thick bolts on the metal casing. He buys an adjustable wrench from the system shop for 80 points to loosen them. He unbolts the cover, puts it in storage, and pulls out the ruined scanner. Holding the damaged piece, the system identifies it as a wide-area scanning array. Its original range was 10 kilometers, with directional scanning capabilities. An upgraded model is available, cost 500 points. It offers better range, higher precision, and anti-interference features. The Rhino is his main lifeline. This investment is totally worth it. He spends the points, reconnects the cables carefully, and goes back inside. He orders U-3342 to run a complete system, self-diagnostic immediately. It reports that all weapon systems are functioning normally once again. Detection range is up 47%, precision up 32%. With the alert system restored, he lets out a massive sigh of relief. He handles a few personal things in the back, then strips off his armor. He lays his combat suit on the relatively clean floor to block the cold. Dressed in his original clothes, he lies down, but the chill still seeps through. Freezing but sheer, brutal exhaustion quickly overrides everything else. Memories of the chaotic battles and slaughter flash rapidly through his mind. Explosions, relentless, ruthless killings, and those mangled, bloody bodies. It feels almost impossible to sleep, but as he lies there, he remembers something. He suddenly remembers the item he snatched near the corpse on his way out. It is the core component of some advanced artificial intelligence unit. He searches his crafting system for minutes, but finds absolutely nothing about it. Unable to fight his heavy eyelids any longer, his mind begins to drift. He falls into a deep sleep, still clutching the quantum mind core in his hand. Suddenly, boom, the thunderous roar of the autocannon violently wakes him. He rolls over, snatches his laser rifle and helmet, and rushes forward. Scrambling to the driver's seat with a pounding heart, he demands a status report. But the expected horde of monsters surrounding his vehicle is nowhere to be seen. Instead, the autocannon turret is simply swiveling back to its default position. Wisps of gray smoke still rise from the barrel, drifting over the silent clearing. Dozens of meters ahead, grotesque carcasses lie scattered, as U-3342 reports. 3 unidentified creatures tried to approach the barrier and were instantly vaporized. He checks the system log, finds no points rewarded, and spots a stranger change. But look closely, the faint green light at the edge of his vision seems closer. Shrunk, the protective safe zone dome has retracted, visibly. His current parking spot is now almost pressing against the boundary line. If he had parked even slightly further back, he would be completely exposed. He starts the engine, moving the Rhino deeper inside the safe zone. The overall safe area has shrunk by about 1/5 of its size. Ruins that were once safe are now completely exposed to the elements. The raw chaos energy is actively eroding them right before his eyes. Anyone relying entirely on that barrier should be worried. His own Jeller field makes the danger manageable. After parking, he notices that his previous injuries, concussion, and fatigue have completely vanished. His health is fully recovered and his mind is sharper than ever. He asks 3342 how long he slept. The response is nearly 14 hours. He eats biscuits and leftover roasted meat from his storage, sprinkled with gene enhancer powder. This is his 4th enhancement. Next, he takes out the quantum mind core again to examine it. In the dark universe of Warhammer 40,000, humanity once had a glorious golden age until the mysterious men of Iron Rebellion nearly destroyed human civilization. Since then, the Emperor strictly prohibited any form of advanced artificial intelligence through his highest edict. Perhaps this is why there is no trace of advanced units in his system. He sets the core on the dashboard while finishing his food, then a system prompt appears. Combinable module discovered, and the quantum mind core can be deeply integrated with his current vehicle, replacing the fire control servitor's biological components to add more control and function. He searches the manufacturing interface for different creations that can use this item. Land Raiders, Manticore self-propelled artillery, and even Imperial Baneblade super heavy tanks require similar control units, but their point costs range from hundreds of thousands to millions, far beyond his Reach, after filtering the list for a while, he finds two realistic options. An attendant servitor modification kit for 8,000 points and a tech thrall. Modification kit for 12,000 points. This tech thrall variant comes equipped with basic repair tools, a laser welder, cutter, and power pliers possessing basic mechanical maintenance and combat capabilities alongside some basic weapon components. Tech thralls are a unique type of servitor of the Adeptus. Mechanicus, equipped with industrial devices to perform simple mechanical repair work and also serving as basic servant soldiers. Since he cannot repair vehicles himself, a tech thrall would solve that problem. He spends 12,000 points, leaving his balance at 2689. The item does not appear in his storage. Instead, a holographic projection materializes before his eyes, showing a rectangular device shaped like a metal coffin. With a prompt to confirm placement, he turns to the passenger compartment and confirms a corner near the rear.